Industrial designer Qin Lishan's life ends in a hospital bed due to overwork. A young man is reborn in the body of the heir of a wealthy family, anticipating a carefree life. Suddenly, the hero finds himself drawn into a brutal struggle for power on the continent. A young man decides to apply the knowledge from his past life to develop his poor lands. The development of the industrial empire makes the guy more and more influential enemies. Qin Lishan is determined to save his loved ones using industrial knowledge from the past. The hero has talent and business acumen, making hearts flutter. The guy challenges the magicians, opposing magic with the invincible power of industry. A simple man begins his journey to becoming an emperor of magic and technology. Doctors are desperately fighting for the life of a patient in intensive care. Mechanical engineer Qin Lishan dies of a heart attack caused by overwork. As a child, the boy was left an orphan after his parents died in a car accident. The young man spent 20 years working in a low-paying job in a soulless company. The hero spent his entire life in complete solitude, never knowing love or warmth. A desperate cry is heard in the fading consciousness. Someone calls Lishan. Doctors desperately fight for the patient's life, but the hero's heart stops. The young man comes to his senses in a luxurious bedroom, not understanding where he is. A system window appears before the guy's eyes, welcoming him to the magical continent of Eldria. In the reflection, the hero sees an unfamiliar face, realizing that he has been reborn in another body. A week later, the young man tries to comprehend his new incredible reality. The charming maid Leia carefully serves Mr. Rain morning tea. Rain enjoys the moment, gradually realizing her new high position in society. The hero accepts his destiny, being reborn in the body of the aristocrat Rain Edgar. The young man learns that he is now the third son of the powerful Duke of Aldaria. As a child, little Rain was surrounded by the sincere love and laughter of his new family. The parents tenderly gave the boy expensive magic water to drink for its magical power. The mother warmly gives her son a new luxurious suit, showing boundless care. As the youngest child, Rain Edgar was bathed in universal adoration and attention. The young man wonders if this life is a reward for past suffering. The guy realizes that he has ended up in the magical world of Eldria, where a powerful empire rules. This world is inhabited not only by people, but also by proud elves and skilled dwarves. The Edgar family owns vast lands and is one of the most noble families. Rain's new life includes a luxurious castle and a personal, charming maid. The guy enjoys his tea, realizing what a wonderful fate he has been given. The sweet maid informs that the head of the family wishes to see the young man immediately. The young man approaches his father's office with excitement, anticipating an important conversation. Rain enters the office where the atmosphere is strict and tense, with power. Duke Aldarian Edgar, ruler of the lands, begins a serious conversation with his son. Confusion appears on the guy's face. He doesn't understand the reason for the call. Father stuns Rain with an offer to take control of his own territory. Father points out to Rain on the map the future possessions in the northwest, placing a huge responsibility on him. The Duke explains that due to the lack of magicians, there is a famine in those lands. Aldarian speaks with concern about the Empire's uncertain future, despite its apparent control. The young man, with a serious expression, realizes the truth of his father's words. The royal family is mired in decline, and political corruption is rampant, threatening everything. Countless secret conflicts and betrayals are tearing the Empire apart from within. After rebirth, the hero feels an unprecedented attachment to people and responsibility. The young man's gaze fills with determination as he vows to protect his new family. The father, seeing his son's determination, softens and promises him all-round support. A brilliant idea is born in the guy's head. He sees a way to solve the food problem. The father looks at Rain with doubt, considering the young man naive and incapable of serious matters. The hero's gaze is full of confidence because he relies not on passion, but on age-old wisdom. The young man, with unshakable confidence, asks his father to trust him with the solution to the problem. Essling, the Western Territory, borders hostile lands, foreshadowing the dangers to come. Due to its location, Essling has become the scene of constant bloody magical wars. Once fertile lands have turned into ashes and the population is rapidly dying out, the carriage takes Rain to his new domain, towards the unknown and difficult trials. On the way, the guy realizes that a large workforce is needed for the Industrial Revolution. The hero realizes that the primary task is to find a way to increase the population. Unexpectedly for himself, Rain discovers that he has acquired new, amazing abilities in this world. The system window informs about a new scanning ability, opening up incredible possibilities for the hero. This power allows Rain to see the hidden characteristics and potential of any person. By checking the skill, the guy gets an accurate idea of people's talents and abilities. The young man understands that in order to revive the lands, he needs to assemble a team of gifted individuals. The father secretly orders the maid to spy on his son, fearing rash actions. The faithful servant looks at her master with anxiety, hoping that he will avoid the coming dangers. Rain arrives in Esling, where the mayor's mansion, which has become his temporary residence, awaits the young man. The city's corrupt mayor is disgusted by Rain's arrival and hatches a devious plan. The mayor recalls the rumors about the universal love for the young man in the family, realizing that he is facing a difficult opponent. The mysterious masked stranger decides to wait, watching events unfold from the shadows. The mayor fearfully discusses his financial machinations with the stranger, fearing exposure. The masked man smirks and reassures the mayor, planning to distract the naive young man. The conspirators decide to meet Rain to immediately begin their insidious plan. The stranger's eyes are filled with a thirst for revenge. He sees Rain's arrival as a chance to take revenge on Aldarian. Arriving at the place, the hero bitterly notes the desolation of the lands and asks Leah for a map. While studying the map, the boy develops an ambitious plan, but a sudden scream distracts his attention. Rain witnesses a family drama where a man takes the last money from his daughter. The girl screams in despair that this money is intended for the treatment of her sick mother. Blinded by excitement, the father furiously demands the money back, hoping to win it back. The daughter desperately clings to her wallet because the life of her closest person depends on this money. The father swings at his daughter in rage, but Rain's fist is already ready to stop the violence. A powerful blow from a young man sends his cruel father flying, restoring justice. The maid looks reproachfully at the guy, who admits his impulsive act. The hero instructs Leah to take care of the girl, intending to personally deal with the villain. Rain's gaze is full of icy contempt, condemning the man for the baseness of his actions. The defeated player asks defiantly who dared to interfere in someone else's affairs. The young man coldly makes it clear that his identity is of no importance. Rain threatens the player with death if he dares to approach the casino again. The frightened man runs away in tears, swearing never to play again. The guy approaches the girl with concern, deciding to check the stranger's status. The rescued girl thanks Rain in tears, realizing that he prevented a real disaster. The guy scans the stranger and, despite her modest characteristics, discovers in her a unique and useful skill. The young man offers to help Eileen, but she, embarrassed by her situation, is afraid of dirtying his carriage. The hero easily dispels the girl's doubts, discouraging her with his simplicity and kindness. The guy's thoughts darken. He wonders about the origin of the casino in the impoverished and ruined region. A flashback shows a brutal attack on the city that claimed many lives. A devastating flood destroyed crops, leaving the surviving inhabitants to hunger and suffering. An empty bowl in trembling hands becomes a terrible symbol of hopeless poverty and despair. Seeing the suffering of the people, Rain makes a firm decision to conduct a census to restore order. The young man decides to start with a visit to the mayor's estate to assess the financial resources for development. Rain calmly asks Lillian for directions, but their conversation is interrupted by impending danger. A brazen horseman with a whip in his hand rushes through the crowd, creating panic in the streets. An arrogant young man on a horse mercilessly drives people away without regard for other people's lives. In a desperate move, Leah covers the gentleman with her body, saving the guy from imminent disaster. After the funny moment, the worried girls rush to Rain, checking if he is injured. The hero calms his companions with a cold smile, but rage is already frozen in the young man's eyes. The young man asks Lillian who this impudent fellow is, and his look does not bode well. The girl tremblingly reports that the rider is the young master of the influential Edwin family. Lillian adds bitterly that it is this family that owns all the casinos in the city. A predatory grin appears on Rain's face, as he has just found a source of funds for his plans. Rain, with icy determination, orders Lillian to take them to the casino, ignoring her fear. The girl, in despair, begs the gentleman to come to his senses, predicting an inevitable loss in the den of gambling. The hero reassures the girl with a confident smile, hinting at a hidden trump card up his sleeve. The departing figure of the young man radiates an aura of power, causing Lillian to tremble with admiration. With a firm intention to revive the kingdom, the young man crosses the threshold of the gambling house. There is an atmosphere of desperation inside the casino, where players are willing to do anything for just one more bet. One of the players celebrates his victory with mad joy, not believing his luck. Watching the gambling fever, the guy understands that the casino is an ulcer on the body of his lands. Leah points anxiously at the numerous guards, doubting the success of the risky undertaking. The hero confidently leads his companions forward, intending to wait for the main target to appear. The helpful dealer, with a false smile, offers Rain a game, unaware of his true intentions. The guy with the sly squint plays the naive newbie, asking for the simplest game to start with. One of the casino workers happily escorts the young man to the gaming table, anticipating easy money. The hero is given 2 free chips, which are supposed to become bait in a well-oiled trap. The young man tosses the chips with elegant nonchalance, launching his daring plan. The croupier excitedly announces a losing combination, confident of his complete victory. The casino worker feigns regret as he notes that the gentleman almost won, hiding his mockery. Rain looks at the proceedings with obvious boredom, making it clear that he is not impressed by this performance. Turning to leave, the guy states that he is hungry, completely ignoring the game. The mask of friendliness falls from the dealer's face, and he blocks the way, demanding payment of an imaginary debt. Rain, with icy calm, asks when he became a debtor, challenging the croupier's impudence. The casino worker reveals the trap with a smug grin, but the guy only disdainfully questions his words. The sinister smile of the swindler leaves no doubt that in this place you have to pay for everything. With a mad laugh, the croupier announces the absurd amount of the debt, enjoying his power. The casino worker's gaze becomes predatory and he makes a vile offer, wanting to get the maid as collateral. Lillian, plucking up her courage, tries to expose the deception by revealing the true value of the chips. Furious at the interference, the croupier orders his men to remove the brave girl from the path. The hero's lightning strike sends the impudent fellow flying, stopping any threat to Lillian. The young man towers over his fallen enemy, his icy tone not auguring well. As the showdown unfolds, other players go into a frenzy, fighting for chips in a miserable agony of excitement. Rain looks on with disdain at the pathetic players consumed by vice and despair. An enraged Edwin appears in the hall, demanding that the culprit of the disorder be found. A predatory smile appears on the hero's face, because the main target has finally fallen into his trap. The young master mercilessly orders his men to punish the guilty player as a warning. Edwin's henchman brutally beats a man begging for mercy, demonstrating his strength. The casino owner sternly warns everyone present that a similar fate awaits anyone who disobeys. Lillian is horrified and blames herself for what is happening, but Leah tries to calm the frightened girl. The memory of injustice fuels the heroine's determination to repay kindness and protect the weak. Unable to stand the deception, the girl boldly steps forward to stop the scammers. Those around her look at Lillian with horror, because no one has ever gone unpunished. Edwin turns around with cold arrogance, not believing that someone dared to address him. Lillian, feeling Rain's support, boldly accuses the young master of fraud and defends her friends. Enraged by the audacity, the casino owner swings at the girl, but she only closes her eyes in anticipation of the blow. Rain easily intercepts his attacker's arm, and his mocking address catches Edwin off guard. A system analysis reveals the enemy's negligible loyalty, and the guy understands that he is facing a dangerous traitor. Taken aback by such force, the young man suspiciously asks what claims Rain has against him. The hero sarcastically approves of brutal methods of survival, but ominously hints at the coming retribution. Edwin smirks cockily, confident in his superiority and not knowing who he's dealing with. The young man's calm is unshakable. He makes it clear that the status of the enemy does not matter to him. Armed guards burst into the hall and the tension reaches its peak, foreshadowing bloodshed. In front of the guards, the hero declares his victory, because his word is now an indisputable law. In the luxurious hall, the nobility weaves intrigues, hoping to curry favor with the new master and Master Lucas. Over a glass of wine, Lord Lucas conceals his insidious plan to take his daughter away from the powerful Duke of Goth. The naive order to only slightly scare someone at the banquet conceals the much more cruel intentions of the conspirators. While raising a toast to the beautiful lady, Lord Lucas skillfully hides his true, predatory nature. The young man's thoughts are occupied with finding Edwin because this is a chance to gain freedom of action through the Duke's son. Lord Lucas's comrade looks at his back with distrust, realizing the precariousness of their treacherous alliance. A loud voice announces the arrival of Rain Zager, and his figure fills the hall with power and anticipation. The flattering nobles immediately rush to the young man, offering gifts and even their own daughters for the sake of his favor. With a mysterious smile, the guy looks around at those gathered, making it clear that the show is just beginning. Rain presents a mysterious drawing, leaving the assembled nobles completely bewildered. The hero's pointer slides over the diagram, revealing an ambitious plan to build a long-lasting dam. Ignorant aristocrats foolishly assume that the dam is needed for catching fish. The guy is preparing for a large-scale presentation, confidently calling on Leah to help with the map. The expression on the young man's face speaks of a deep knowledge of the city's geography and its problems. The young man convincingly proves that his project will solve the age-old problems of floods and droughts. Lord Lucas is surprised to discover that the Duke's son is far more perceptive than he thought. One of the greedy nobles brazenly asks what their wallets have to do with this grandiose plan. With a sly smile, the hero directly states that he only needs money to implement the project. The hypocritical nobles immediately begin to play the poor, unanimously declaring their poverty. Lord Lucas thinks with disdain about the young man's naivety, because these vampires only know how to pump out money. Rain triumphantly announces his catch and offers a new way to make money, shocking everyone. Panic grips the nobility as the casino raid threatens their secret income and investments. Realizing that all the casinos belong to Mr. Adrian, the nobles gloat, anticipating trouble for the hero. Lord Lucas coldly concludes that the boy brought trouble upon himself by starting this war. The young man tries to reason with Rain, hypocritically appealing to the laws of the nation, which he himself violates. Inspired by the support, the cowardly nobles begin to shout in unison about the hero's wrongness. The guy calmly listens to hypocritical cries about the legality of a business that ruins ordinary people. Rain, with icy calm, recalls their recent complaints about poverty, exposing their lies. The young man's gaze turns steely. He gives them one last chance, and a threat hangs in the air. Rain issues an ultimatum, offering the hypocrites to surrender voluntarily or face his ruthless force. The hero subtly hints to Lord Lucas about the Duke's wrath if his dark deeds and intrigues are revealed. A sarcastic grin appears on the guy's face, because the hypocrites themselves have fallen into the trap of the law. The young man, without hesitation, gives the order to detain all those present, cutting off their pathetic excuses. The sudden appearance of the two captives shocks Mr. Adrian, as they were Weatherloo's men. Rain innocently asks Adrian if the faces of the bandits he brought in are familiar to him. Mr. Adrian tries to hide his concern by falsely denying any connection with the captives. The young man casually drops the shocking news that these two tried to kill him today. With a sly smile, the hero hints at a powerful patron, and Adrian's face is distorted with fear. The guy orders the prisoners to be untied in order to expose the conspirators in front of all the nobility. Horror grips the nobility at the sight of Weatherloo's followers, because an attempt on Rain's life threatens everyone with death. Despair flashes in Adrian's eyes. He understands that one word from the prisoners will destroy his entire family. In a desperate attempt to save himself, Lord Adrian throws his blade at the witnesses to silence them forever. The death blow ends the lives of the mercenaries, and their dying screams echo throughout the hall. Breathing heavily, the conspirator stands over the lifeless bodies, realizing the full gravity of his bloody deed. Adrian puts on a show of repentance, hypocritically apologizing to the young man for his lack of restraint. Rain notes the Lord's nobility with venomous praise, subtly mocking his ostentatious fairness. With an icy smile, the guy demands to bring the main culprit, continuing his ruthless game. Edwin is dragged into the center of the room by force, his cries of rage filling the air with impotent rage. The young man, in a blind rage, threatens to kill everyone, not realizing that his father has already written him off. Lord Adrian is horrified to realize that his own son has been captured and their entire plot is now exposed. A tied-up Edwin screams in rage at his father, not believing that he dared to kill his loyal servants. The young man spews out threats, promising cruel torture and a painful death to his offender. Reina is only amused by the blind rage of the prisoner, and he listens to the threats with icy calm. Edwin, with a mad grin, declares that he has no equal in this city, and the life of a hero is predetermined. The young man's sincere laughter echoes throughout the hall, because this is the first time he has seen such stupid and blind courage. The boy sarcastically asks Lord Hadrian if he shares his admiration for his son's courage. The prisoner continues to laugh madly, not realizing that his fate has already been decided by his own father. Lord Hadrian's patience snaps, and he orders his son to shut up and kneel in horror. Edwin's world collapses in an instant, and he looks at his father who betrayed him with complete bewilderment. Lord Adrian, in desperation, forces his son to his knees, humiliating him in front of the ruthless hero. The conspirator humbly begs to spare his stupid offspring, ready to agree to any conditions for the sake of salvation. His father's warning came to mind, But the mad Edwin did not pay attention to the terrible words. A chilling horror pierces the boy when he finally realizes that he has challenged the son of a Grand Duke. Rain hints at his origins with a cold smile, explaining the presence of numerous guards. Edwin's arrogance instantly flies off him and he falls to the floor in panic, begging for mercy. Adrian's face was frozen in genuine horror as he helplessly watched his son's pleas. The father kneels down next to his son, begging for forgiveness in utter despair on behalf of the entire family. The young man puts forward his condition, demanding the return of everything illegally acquired, and this sounds like a death sentence. Lord Adrian tearfully thanks for the mercy, feeling only the empty relief of a saved bankrupt. One of the guests, overcome with anxiety, decides to risk everything to inform on the city lord. On bended knee, the informant reveals to Rain the shocking truth about the conspiracy against the Grand Duke. The accusation of treason strikes horror into the nobility, and the face of the city lord is distorted with rage. Adrian panics and tries to save the situation by desperately shouting insults at the daredevil. With icy disappointment, the hero revokes his mercy and pronounces the death sentence on the slanderers. The city lord smirks maliciously, dismissing Rain as an impulsive fool who fell for the trick. Playing the role of a loyal subject, the conspirator approaches the young man with hypocritical praise and gratitude. Hiding his treacherous nature, the city lord theatrically swears eternal loyalty. Rain looks at the liar with piercing calm, and his faith sounds like a veiled threat. The system reveals the true nature of the lord, confirming that the guy saw right through him from the very beginning. Rain's mind flashes to the shocking amount stolen by the nobility, equal to 2 years' taxes for an entire city. The devoted maid Leah brings tea, creating a brief respite from the tense atmosphere of intrigue. The young man asks the girl with a bitter smile if she realizes the full depth of the greed of the local nobles. Leah, with concern in her voice, asks about the hero's plans regarding the revelations made by Adrian. Fear distorts the girl's face at the thought of rebellion, because then her master will be in mortal danger. The guy tiredly calms the maid, assuring her that everything is under control, although he himself is aware of the complexity of the situation. The maid looks at the young man in bewilderment, not understanding the reasons for his wait-and-see tactics. Rain explains his vulnerability, as enemies are hidden in the shadows, and haste will only lead to chaos. The hero prefers to appear as a naive rich man in order to lull the enemy's vigilance and strike at the very root. The old magician is completely perplexed, because the scale of corruption revealed by the document seems unthinkable. The city lord tries to calm the angry Malcolm by hypocritically justifying Rain's actions as his youthful zeal. The guildmaster angrily scolds the lord, reminding him that even a great duke does not dare to neglect wizards. A cunning plan is brewing in the conspirator's head, because he himself set up the situation in order to push the hero into conflict with the Guild of Magicians. The enraged magician is eager to start a showdown, and the city ruler pretends to try to stop him, hiding his gloating. An evil grin touches the lord's lips, because he is sure that now the young man will be left completely alone. The hero's thoughts are carried away to the past, when his only concern was engineering drawings, and not deadly intrigues. Loyal Leah reports a sudden visit from the wizard's guildmaster, unaware of the impending storm. Complete bewilderment is reflected on Rain's face, because he has no idea who this man is and what he wants from him. Malcolm bursts in uninvited, unleashing a stream of angry accusations on the stunned boy from the doorway. The young man is completely confused and tries to understand when and how he managed to insult the powerful guild. An enraged Malcolm shoves a letter in the hero's face, accusing him of outright discrimination against wizards. Rain calmly rereads the document, sincerely not understanding how the construction of a dam could offend an entire guild. The guildmaster shouts in rage that refusing to accept offers from mages is an outright provocation. A feeling of bewilderment flashed through the guy's mind, because he couldn't even imagine that wizards were hired for hard physical work. Malcolm issues an ultimatum, threatening a complete boycott by the guild if he does not receive a full explanation. The young man immediately understands that this is a setup, and the system confirms that the loyal magician was simply skillfully provoked. Keeping his icy calm, Rain begins to lay out 3 compelling reasons for his pragmatic decision. The hero clearly explains that hiring magicians is economically unprofitable, because for the same price you can provide work for 10. The young man declares his duty as a ruler, who is obliged to take care of the common people and not the rich wizards. Rain's arguments only fuel Malcolm's rage, as he is convinced that people without magic are unworthy of standing on par with mages. Rain rejects unfair rules with cold calm, challenging the entire world order. The hero's gaze burns with determination because he intends to prove that there is no difference between citizens and magicians. Malcolm, furious, demands that he take his words back, threatening to make the young man an enemy of the entire powerful guild. Rain's icy gaze pierces the mage, and the young man's voice is filled with an undisguised steely threat. Leah suddenly appeared with a blade at the wizard's throat, proving that the master's words were not empty chatter. Mortal terror grips Malcolm as he realizes that his daring threat has turned into a real danger. With a devilish grin, the guy offers to test the ancient law in practice by putting the life of the magician himself on the line. All the arrogance flies off the wizard, and in panic, he begs for mercy, humiliatingly asking the girl for forgiveness. Rain notes with surprise that even on the brink of death, the magician's loyalty did not waver, but only revealed his simplicity. The hero graciously orders Leah to let the terrified Malcolm go, completing a brutal but instructive lesson. Rain looks forward to the rewards for the completed mission, opening up new horizons of power for himself. The city lord greets the humiliated Malcolm with false sympathy, preparing to weave a new web of intrigue. Deeply offended, the guildmaster complains about the youth's insolence, not noticing the trap that had been set. A treacherous fire flares in the eyes of the city ruler, and he offers the magician a sophisticated plan for revenge. The conspirator convinces the wizard that if Rain is deprived of his working hands, he will crawl on his knees begging for help. Malcolm shows a moment of common sense, doubting that ordinary people would turn down a lucrative job. The Lord dismisses the doubts with disdain, confidently declaring that commoners are too lazy and will surely disappoint the hero. However, the magician, having cooled down, refuses to sabotage, admitting that he was disappointed only by the very fact of being refused employment. Losing patience, the Lord puts new pressure on Malcolm, calling the peasants helpless rabble. The city ruler, with a poisonous grin, tries to prove that helping these useless people is just a waste of time. A hurt Malcolm, with a heavy heart, agrees to the city lord's insidious plan. The news of the new ruler's generous offer spreads among the townspeople, arousing keen interest. Inveterate cynicism makes people see the proposal as another trap from the nobility. A young girl with shining eyes tries to convey to the crowd the sincere intentions of Rain. The bandits' rude taunts rain down on the girl, ridiculing her naive belief in goodness. Evil laughter accompanies the vulgar hints about the girl's romantic feelings for the young ruler. Ignoring the bullying, the heroine and her father resolutely approach the job application. The recruiter makes an unexpected verdict, accepting the father but rejecting the girl herself. The heroine's face is distorted with bewilderment and resentment because she considers herself strong enough. The assistant explains the Rhine's immutable order, established to protect the youth from hard labor. The recruiter explains in detail to the man the incredibly generous and fair conditions of work in construction. Lillian admonishes her father with touching seriousness, and he tenderly promises to give his all. A flame of hope ignites in the heart of the simple worker, and he mentally vows to justify the trust of the young master. A father entrusts his daughter with the care of her sick mother, accidentally revealing the difficult family situation to Rain's assistant. A sudden call from a soldier makes the father and daughter freeze in anxious bewilderment as they were about to leave. The assistant asks sympathetically about his sick wife, and a desperate plea breaks into the man's voice. The soldier smiles and reports on Rhine's unheard-of decree allowing workers to house sick relatives nearby. He clarifies that this is temporary housing, but even such care seems like a real miracle to the family. Shocked to the depths of his soul, the man falls to his knees, unable to hold back tears of gratitude for the mercy shown. The assistant kindly helps the father get up, promising to immediately provide his family with housing of their choice. The crowd's distrust turns to jubilation, and people rush to sign up, afraid of missing their only chance. The hope for a better life turns the queue into a chaotic crush, where everyone fights for their place in the sun. The system rewards Rain with a blueprint from the future that looks like a mockery in this backward world. The guy is comically desperate and doesn't understand what to do with useless technology without a power source. A new system quest challenges the young man to search for 5 legendary heroes in a vast world. Rain is disappointed to realize that his faithful servant Leah has already reached her limit and will not help in the new quest. The heavy burden of the mission forces the young man to once again set out in search of hidden talents among the townspeople. The hero's calm is interrupted by an unexpected visit, and he allows the agitated Lillian to enter. A girl bursts into the office in a panic, reporting sabotage at a construction site where workers have suddenly stopped working. Rain's face freezes in surprise and alarm, because he cannot believe the betrayal of the people he gave hope to. Lillian finds her father completely exhausted, and he, like everyone else, complains of mysterious morning weakness. The angry girl reproaches the exhausted workers for laziness, not believing their excuses after such a generous offer. The workers try their best to justify themselves, but they are overcome by an irresistible, almost magical yawn. People try to justify their weakness in a fictitious illness, suggesting that they simply put off work until tomorrow. Lillian's patience snaps, and she furiously accuses the workers of outright laziness and unwillingness to admit the truth. Rain's appearance causes the heroine to ask him to intervene, but he only coldly states that such a disease does not exist. The young man bends silently over one of the exhausted workers, and his gaze reveals not anger, but cold analysis. A system scan reveals a shocking truth. The cause is not laziness, but a sinister anomaly. A curse. The realization of a terrible truth falls upon Rain, because all the workers are under the influence of an ominous curse. Faced with sabotage, the hero decides to immediately use his secret trump card, which he saved for construction. The system reveals to Rain its incredible ability to see through the earth, analyzing every layer of rock. The young man fully trusts his power and launches a deep hydrological analysis of the area. In the midst of the disappointing emptiness of the depths, an anomalous signal suddenly flares up, capturing the hero's attention. Rain points to the source of the signal and asks the worker to dig despite everyone's fatigue, and he meekly agrees. An ominous crystal emerges from the ground, and Leah is amazed that the young man was able to sense magic that even she could not. Surrounded by an aura of power, the boy gives the order to extract the cursed artifact without showing an ounce of doubt. Rain, with icy calm, turns to Leah to find out traditional ways to combat curses. The maid explains that in such cases people seek salvation in the church, or from powerful magicians from the guild. The hero tells Lillian and her father to follow him, confirming the girl's terrible suspicion about the curse. Rain's face is distorted by cold rage, because he already knows the culprit and swears that this meanness will not go unpunished. In the church, they are met by Saint Ayuria, radiating angelic calm and kindness. But Rain is not swayed by the charm and secretly orders the system to check the nun's true nature. The system instantly scans the saint, revealing her hidden parameters and high level of fidelity. A shocking discovery stuns the guy because a real elf is hiding under the guise of a human. Convinced of Ayuria's high loyalty, the hero explains the essence of the problem, carefully observing the reaction. The saint, with a serious expression, asks permission to personally examine the condition of the damned worker. Lillian's eyes are filled with horror as a divine light envelops her father, causing him to go into a fit of pain. After studying, Ayuria confidently confirms the terrible diagnosis, leaving no doubt about the curse. Rain, without hesitation, asks the main question, on which the fate of all the injured workers depends. In response, the saint demonstrates her incredible divine power, preparing to perform a real miracle. Divine light pierces the worker's body, driving out the dark energy of the curse with excruciating pain. Full of strength and gratitude, the man feels reborn, ready to move mountains for Mr. Rain. The hero shows the saint the sinister discovery, and Ayuria and Rain decide to first sort everything out without haste. The nun confidently identifies the artifact as an ordinary dark crystal filled with magic to maintain the curse. The saint, with a slight smile, calls this more of a joke, because the enemy had the power to kill but only sent fatigue. Rain asks a key question about the ease of producing crystals, trying to assess the scale of the threat posed by the saboteur. Ayuria confirms that for an experienced wizard, creating and setting such traps on a daily basis will not be difficult at all. The saint admits her interest with a smile, because the project has already made life much easier for the city and the church. The young man's face hardens, and he finally decides to teach the insolent old man a harsh lesson. Going on the counteroffensive, Rain asks Ayuria for the unthinkable, to completely cleanse the entire huge construction site from the curse. Ayuria regretfully explains that the constant hunt for crystals will stop construction, and luck will not last forever. Rain realizes with annoyance that he will have to take a break from his work and personally deal with the little troublemaker. The saint intrigues the hero by offering help from a strange but powerful acquaintance, and he accepts this risky chance. Following the directions, the young man finds himself at the house of Lady Selena, the former president of the Wizards Guild. The guy is determined and ready to do anything to convince the powerful sorceress to help him in his case. Leah's sudden scream and desperate push saves Rain just before disaster as she lunges at him. A powerful explosion blows away the entrance to the mansion, confirming that it was a death trap and not an accident. The hero, covering the maid, looks at the destruction with cold anger, realizing that the enemy has crossed the line. An enraged Selena emerges from the smoke, swearing that she will not put up with this and will rather raze the city to the ground. The sorceress coldly refuses to help, stating that she has no time for other people's problems due to important research. Rain is ironically interested in Selena's magical device, unaware of its true purpose. Irritated by the lack of understanding, the sorceress proudly shows off her mysterious invention. Leah boldly stands up for her master, demanding that the powerful sorceress show respect for the young man. Selena is amazed to feel incredible magical power in the maid, changing her attitude. Surrounded by lightning, the sorceress makes a daring offer to Leah, trying to lure her to her side. The unwavering Leah unleashes her own aura, ready to teach the impudent sorceress a lesson in politeness. Rain stops the brewing battle by reminding Leah of the true purpose of their visit and redirecting her attention. Selena acknowledges her failures with a smile, but her gaze shows respect for the guy's insight. The sorceress reveals her ambitious plan to create a repository for electrical magic, stunning Rain. The idea of a device to store lightning magic strikes Rain, and a brilliant plan instantly appears in his head. Selena dismisses the problem with annoyance, complaining about the constant explosions and chasing away the uninvited guests. Rain makes a bold move, offering a solution to her main problem in exchange for a favor against the Wizards Guild. The sorceress explodes with indignation, not believing the bold statement and accusing the young man of wasting his time. The guy remains icy calm, repeating his proposal with a serious look and making Selena doubt. Interested, Selena makes an incredible promise, promising not just help, but complete submission to the Mages Guild. She challenges him with a threat, because in case of failure, all responsibility will fall on the shoulders of the hero himself. With a smug smile, Rain takes out the blueprints from the future, knowing that victory is already in his pocket. The batteries, perfectly assembled according to the drawings, become the material embodiment of the young man's brilliant plan. Selena is skeptical and warns of danger, confident that these stones will explode from the slightest spark. The young man confidently hands her the cable, offering to test his words and show her power. Selena releases streams of pure lightning, channeling all her power into the proposed device. Shock and disbelief are reflected on the sorceress' face as the battery easily absorbs the energy without even flinching. Rain, with a satisfied grin, adds fuel to the fire, saying that this is far from the limit for his invention. Enraged by his self-confidence, the girl decides to go all the way to wipe that impudent smile off the guy's face. Completely exhausted, Selena collapses, having given every last drop of her magic to the insatiable battery. The sorceress's gaze is full of amazement because this incredible thing was actually able to contain all of her power. The system shows a stunning result because the heroine alone charged the battery almost to the limit. A predatory smile appears on Rain's face because now he has his own, very convenient human battery. The hero picks up the cables, intending to demonstrate his hidden talents and the power of accumulated energy. A shocked Selena wonders how a mere human with no magic could harness such incredible power. Rain challenges the status quo by promising to make electrical magic available to every Elling resident. The sorceress's worldview is cracking at the seams because she cannot believe that magic can be so easily comprehended. The hero tempts Selena with an incredible prospect, offering her to see the world of universal magic in exchange for help. The idea of a world where everyone has magic completely takes hold of the girl, igniting a fire of curiosity in her eyes. The old wizard smugly awaits the capitulation, confident that Mr. Rain will come begging for mercy any minute. The old man's wait is interrupted by the sudden appearance of Selena, who demonstrates her complete superiority from the very beginning. The old mage's face is distorted with horror, because he never expected to see the former president of the guild here. The sorceress mockingly accuses the old man of rebellion, because he dared to stand in the way of the Duke's offspring. Panicked, the old man babbles excuses, swearing that he would never have taken such a risk. Selena's patience snaps and she grabs the old man by the beard, furiously demanding that he tell her all his dirty secrets. Flashes of red magic surround Selena as she icily calmly reminds the old man of her fiery nature. Frightened to tears, the old magician in a panic agrees to tell everything, begging the enraged sorceress for mercy. The old man admits that he deliberately set the mages against the young lord by lying to them about Rain's contempt. The evil plan was to create cursed crystals to wear out the workers and make them appear lazy in the eyes of the hero. In his dreams, The old wizard had already seen how the humiliated Rain came with apologies and agreed to cooperate. Selena contemptuously calls the old man an idiot because he didn't even realize that he had become a pawn in someone else's game. Realization dawns on the old magician, and he asks in horror who could have used him so insidiously. The sorceress kicks out the pathetic schemer, ordering the immediate recall of all rebellious magicians. With the help of a magical device, the girl reports to Rain that the problem with the Wizards Guild has been completely resolved. The young man thanks Selena with a satisfied smile, realizing that he has acquired a powerful and effective ally. Selena, with cold determination, offers to eliminate the old man, ready to make him disappear without a trace. Rain calmly stops her, explaining that this fool is just bait for a bigger catch. Satisfied with the solution to the problem, the sorceress is about to leave, but she is stopped by a sudden interest. The girl's eyes light up with anticipation, and she eagerly asks about starting a new joint project. The hero gives her the first task, instructing her to force the guild's mages to fill the batteries he created with energy. In a dark room, a subordinate anxiously reports to a mysterious stranger about Rain's unexpected success. The masked man dismisses the news, turning his attention to a more important goal, the mysterious dam project. The assistant warns that the young lord's success could ruin their plans, but assures him that he has already set a trap. The cunning schemer reveals his plan with a grin, telling about the secret pressure on the nobility to increase the price of grain. His mysterious master expresses doubt, asking a reasonable question about the reliability of the purchased aristocrats. The assistant confidently states that the greed of the aristocrats will become a reliable lever of pressure on the young lord. He flips a coin, convinced that the dam project will fail financially due to the hero's lack of funds. At the market, an impudent merchant forcefully pushes a girl away, driving her out due to a lack of money for the purchase. The maid, who has fallen to the ground, cries out in despair about the injustice because prices have doubled overnight. The merchant shouts back with contempt, declaring his right to set any price for his own goods. The faithful maid asks Rain to trust her with the purchase, promising to save money and get the grain at the lowest price. The girl boldly challenges the scammers, threatening them with the wrath of her brother Rain, but her words only cause laughter. The greedy seller only mocks the threat, hiding behind the mask of an honest merchant and not seeing any danger for himself. Blinded by the thirst for profit, the merchant raises his leg over the defenseless girl, seeing in this only a golden opportunity. The nun looks at what is happening with anger, realizing that these people have crossed all the boundaries of what is permissible. The girls anxiously discuss the skyrocketing prices of grain, realizing that this is a real catastrophe. The saint tells Ilaria in despair that there won't be enough supplies, but the warrior resolutely promises to sort everything out. The nun hands Ilaria a bag of money, trusting the girl to deal with the greedy merchants fairly. Ilaria is surprised by the saint's generosity, because the bag contains much more money than is required for a fair deal. Tired of the problems, the nun abruptly cuts off the questions, ordering Ilaria to simply carry out the given assignment. Rain suddenly appears and hands the holy a bag of money, catching the nun off guard with his offer. With a mysterious smile, the young man offers a deal, holding in his hands a weighty argument in the form of a bag of gold. The saint looks at the young man with caution, trying to unravel the true motives of this strange proposal. Rain mentions Miss Elf with a slight grin, making it clear that she is fully aware of the nun's affairs. Caught in a lie, the nun panics and denies the obvious, but Rain's self-confident appearance leaves no doubt that the guy is right. Rain disarms the elf with his directness, and she, resigned to the revelation, cautiously inquires about the nature of the deal. The young man points to sacks of grain, offering to solve the most pressing problem of the starving people. The saint looks at the young man with doubt, tactfully hinting that he has taken on a task that is beyond his capabilities. Intrigued by her words, the hero thoughtfully asks the nun to explain the reason for such pessimism. The nun reveals the terrible truth about 4 noble families who have kept the city under their thumb for centuries. She admits that Rain's recent démarche only scared the small fry but did not affect the true owners of Elling. Surprised by the guy's knowledge, the saint suspiciously asks where he got such deep knowledge about the city. The elf regretfully admits that due to the feud with the Alardan family, all avenues for negotiations are now cut off. Despair envelops the nun, because due to war and disasters, her people are on the brink of starvation. Rain promises Miss Elf with unshakable confidence that in just half a month, grain prices will fall below their previous levels. The head of the Klein family, August, laughs smugly, thanking the Lord Mayor for supporting them in their dark deeds. The four heads of families celebrate the enormous profits obtained thanks to Augustus's insidious plan. The other lords obsequiously thank Augustus, acknowledging his leadership in this dirty scam. Lord Augustus raises his glass of wine in triumph, proposing a toast to their shared success and wealth. The clink of glasses seals their criminal conspiracy, signifying the prosperity of a business built on someone else's grief. A servant suddenly appears and interrupts the feast, announcing an invitation to a banquet from young Master Rain. One of the lords freezes in panic, not understanding why Rain is calling them to a banquet after everything that happened. Fear grips the conspirator at the thought that the young man has guessed everything and is now going after their heads. The frightened lord turns to Augustus in despair, because they only wanted money, not a mortal fight. August, with a devilish grin, reassures his accomplice, confident of his impunity under the protection of the mayor. Augustus slams his fist down on the table, confident that their unity will make the conspirators invulnerable to Rhine. With his face twisted in anger, Lord Klein asserts his power over prices, which even the emperor does not possess. The other lords agree with greed in their eyes, seeing this as a chance to ensure prosperity for their families for centuries to come. Augustus calmly lays out his plan, ready to make the slightest concession just to calm the young master. Lord Klein's gaze turns icy, and he sternly warns of the consequences for anyone who dares to betray the conspiracy. The accomplices fearfully swear allegiance, assuring Augustus of their unwavering devotion until the very end. The head of the Klein family gives the order to prepare for a banquet, anticipating a meeting where he will humiliate the young upstart. One of the lords asks with a goofy smile whether it is necessary to change clothes, not fully realizing the seriousness of the moment. Rain sits calmly in a chair, and Selena stands behind him, creating an atmosphere of tense anticipation. The servant reports the arrival of the guests, and now everything is ready for the decisive battle for power and influence in the city. Rain gives the servant an order with a smile, while Selena gently presses herself against the guy, creating a deceptive impression of an idol. Augustus and his accomplices greet the young master with feigned respect, hiding their greed behind a mask of humility. With icy calm, the hero exposes their masquerade, sarcastically reproaching the most influential nobles for their unkempt appearance. Lord Klein begins his hypocritical performance, brazenly declaring his generous support for the project and his assistance to the townspeople. Selena can hardly contain her rage as she watches these shameless scoundrels openly try to deceive Rain. The young man plays along with them, feigning sincerity and thanking them for their understanding and supposed support of his efforts. Hiding his face in his palm, the young man feigns deep gratitude, making the conspirators believe in their success. Getting to the point, Rain starts talking about grain, and the lords, feeling superior, hint at his money problems. The conspirators are shedding crocodile tears, complaining that even the current inflated price is a huge loss for them. Dropping his mask of naivety, Rain, with a predatory smile, offers to double the price, leaving the scammers completely stupefied. Lord Augustus is stunned by Rain's audacity, unable to believe his ears at the proposal to raise the price to 4 gold pieces. With cold determination, the young man confirms the price and adds the deadly condition of his 30% share. The head of the Klein family tries to dodge, pretending to be old and deaf, in order to make the guy doubt his words. Rain adamantly reminds Mr. August of his share, making it clear that the negotiations are over. August, with a wry smile, realizes his fatal mistake, because he mistook the ruthless predator for an inexperienced youth. The other lords are delighted to realize that the same greedy blood flows in the Rhine, and they anticipate easy profit. Pleased with the effect produced, the hero leans back in his chair, enjoying the change in the mood of the conspirators. One of the lords voices the main problem, because without an official decree, raising prices will cause a popular uprising. Augustus slavishly thanks Rain for his understanding, eagerly awaiting the decree that will free their hands. The young man announces that the document is already ready and sealed. All that remains is to wait until the end of lunch. Rain issues a chilling warning, reminding that the fate of the Alari family will be a lesson to any disobedient ones. The conspirators, with obsequious smiles, shower him with gratitude, hypocritically promising to repay the young man's kindness. One of the lords asks Augustus in confusion whether he should inform the mayor about such a strange plan to raise prices. Augustus cuts him off angrily, convinced that the young man is simply using them and has no real power. The head of the Klein family proclaims that luck is on their side, and only a complete fool would pass up such a chance to make money. Overcome with excitement, one of the accomplices admits that he has never seen such a wonderful opportunity in his entire life. The same lord fervently swears eternal loyalty to Augustus, ready to follow him through fire and water. August laughs triumphantly, celebrating their unity and anticipating an easy victory over the naive youth. Blinded by greed, Lord Klein urges his accomplices to buy up grain before the decree is issued, dreaming of untold riches. The night air is pierced by cries of despair and accusations of betrayal, because someone has broken the promise to reduce prices. An enraged holy sister bursts into Rain's office, demanding to know why he conspired with the hated merchants. With a look burning with anger, the elf vows to show everyone that messing with her people is deadly. The young nun tries to calm the abbess, but she does not believe in a reduction in prices after an alliance with dishonest people. With hope in her voice, the girl begs him to believe in Rain, being sure of the existence of a secret plan. The holy sister looks at the young man with despair, still not believing that he is really going to raise the price of grain. Rain, with icy calm, assures that the price will not hold for long, predicting a complete collapse of the market in 2 weeks. The abbess, from the height of her age, calls the guy inexperienced, because she has never seen prices fall from a peak. A young man asks a holy sister a cruel question, wondering how much the price will fall at gunpoint. The priestess cries out in despair that raising the price to 4 gold will condemn her people to certain death by starvation. Rain says the terrible truth with a heavy heart, because even at a price of 2 gold coins, people still die of hunger. With cold cruelty, Rain explains that for the poor, the difference in price does not matter, because they will still die of starvation. The holy sister is speechless as the hero reveals his true, much larger and more merciless plan. With a devilish grin, the young man announces his intention to ruin the merchants completely, taking absolutely everything from them. 7 days later, a strange lesson begins in a stately mansion that has no apparent connection to the grain crisis. Rain patiently explains to the mysterious beauty in red the complex operating principle of the incomprehensible device. The diagram clearly demonstrates the movement of electrons that maintain chemical balance in the mysterious mechanism. Understanding dawns on the girl, and she delightedly realizes the genius of this intricate magical system. The lesson is over, but the peace is disturbed by a sudden visit from the holy sister Ayuria, who has come again with angry demands. Irritated by the visit, Rain learns from his companion that, due to his actions, the price of grain has skyrocketed to 7 gold pieces. Ayuria shouts in rage that now even the lesser nobility cannot afford grain, let alone the common people. Rain calmly drinks tea, clarifying with Selena that exactly 7 painful days have passed since the beginning of their game. With a predatory smile, the young man announces that the time has come to send the lying merchants on their final journey. Ayuria, in desperation, demands an end to the riddles and threatens a complete severance of relations on behalf of her clan. The hero calmly explains that he was silent only to check, and now he is finally ready to tell her the whole truth. Rain begins her story with the news of the price increase, asking the holy sister a tricky question about the main shortage in the city. The abbess answers in confusion that they have no shortages, completely not understanding what the young man is getting at. With grim satisfaction, the boy lays his cards on the table, declaring that the only thing missing in Essling is grain merchants. The holy sister finally begins to see the light when Rain confirms that the city is full of food, sold by the merchants themselves. The young man, with a cynical grin, talks about human greed, which cannot be satisfied. The sign with the new price of 4 gold per sack becomes a symbol of triumph, because the trap has slammed shut. Word of the fabulous profit spreads throughout the area, and greedy merchants from all sides flock to Essling. The conspirators are looking forward to 4 noble fools buying up all the grain that was brought in, whetting their appetites even more. The city is drowning in grain, and the merchants are losing their minds from the anticipation of 10,000% profit, dreaming only of wealth. Rain triumphantly announces the imminent fall of 4 noble families, completing his multi-move intrigue. The young man gives Selena an order that will be the final nail in the coffin of the presumptuous lords. The hero orders to announce that the Holy Virgin Ayuria, dissatisfied with the ruler's methods, is selling off the church's grain reserves. With an icy smile, the guy announces a crushing price of 1 gold coin per bag, crashing the market. A stunned Ayuria doesn't understand why Rain is creating such a flawless reputation for the girl at his own expense. The young man, with sly simplicity, replies that he cannot sell grain that he simply does not have. The holy sister panics when she realizes that she, too, cannot sell the meager supplies intended to save her people during the winter. Ayuria, in desperation, refuses to carry out the order, as this grain is the last hope of her elven tribe to survive the winter. The red-haired lady mockingly calls the holy sister naive, convincing her to sell the grain for a huge profit. The abbess proudly declares that the elves do not need money. They only need grain to save their people. Rain, with unwavering confidence, asks the girl to trust, promising that the grain will only grow more. The hero turns to Lady Celine and the Mages Guild, counting on their power to completely seal the city. A powerful sorceress with a predatory smile promises that not a single rat will be able to escape from the trap she has set. The young man raises his hand in triumph, proclaiming that the time has come to make the greedy merchants pay for everything. Noticing the alarm on the maid's face, the young man asks with concern, what has Selena so worried? The girl shares her fears, fearing that the whole plan will collapse if the traitors find a loophole. Rain calmly explains the nature of her double trap, which is impossible to escape from because it plays on greed itself. Blinded by greed, traders rush to sell grain in panic as soon as they learn of a crushing fall in price. Rain explains with icy calm that in this game, delay is tantamount to a death sentence for their wallets. A panicked messenger bursts into Lord Augustus's presence with terrible news that threatens to ruin their wicked plan. The herald reports that the church has begun selling its grain reserves at the unimaginably low price of 1 gold coin. The conspirators look at their leader in horror, desperately asking what they should do now in this catastrophic situation. One of the advisors realizes with horror their fatal mistake, because they completely forgot to take into account the power of the church. The merchant is panicking and shouting about losses, but Lord Augustus calls for calm, not believing in the large reserves of the priests. With determination in his eyes, Lord Augustus orders that men be sent immediately and every last grain from the church be bought up. The accomplices nod in agreement, still hoping to seize the initiative and save their position from complete collapse. A huge crowd had already gathered at the church gates, ahead of the conspirators and desperately demanding cheap grain. Ayuria struggles to contain the crowd as she announces 10,000 sacks of grain from the Pope. The visiting traders panic, not believing their eyes and urging each other on until the saving grain runs out. The desperate crowd loses control, sweeping away everything in its path in an attempt to reach the carts with cheap food. The assistant informs the stunned abbess that this is only the first batch, and more grain will arrive tomorrow. The holy sister cannot hold back her tears of relief, mentally begging Lord Rain to stop because her cup of emotions is overflowing. The townspeople rejoice with happiness because now they have food, and the rescue that has come seems like a real miracle. Out-of-town merchants stand in the crowd with dead faces, realizing that their business has collapsed in an instant due to the church's fault. The young merchant counts his losses in horror, realizing that delay will lead to complete ruin. In desperation, the merchant begins to shout, offering fresh grain for only 95 silver coins per sack. The crowd immediately reacts to his offer, and a mad race begins, with everyone trying to save their money. The old conspirator looks at his accomplice in rage, because delay threatens them all with complete ruin. Panic mounts and grain prices crash in a mad race as everyone tries to save whatever they can. Selena watches the events from the balcony with delight, as Rain's brilliant plan comes true exactly. The hero explains to the girl with a grin the cruel nature of human panic, which was the key to success. Rain condescendingly corrects the maid, claiming that she greatly underestimates the depth of the merchant's desperation. The young man kindly explains that the real chain reaction will begin when Augustus's own people start selling. Grain becomes the cheapest thing in town, and happy citizens carry away sacks under the watchful eyes of the victors. The girl doubts that Lord Augustus and his accomplices will sell at a loss because they paid a huge amount of money. Selena naively believes that friendship and shared feasts will keep the conspirators from betraying each other. Rain notes with a sad smile that his assistant places too much trust in an alliance that is only held together by greed. Rain cynically states that in the pursuit of profit, no one will give in, anticipating the coming betrayal. The hero announces the completion of the first stage, preparing to move on to the second part of the deal with the Holy Virgin. The messenger, in a panic, reports to Lord Augustus that out-of-town merchants, as if mad, are slashing prices. With horror in his voice, the messenger reports that the price of grain has already fallen to 75 silver coins per sack. One of the lords refuses to believe, because they were confident in their monopoly and do not understand where someone else's grain came from. The messenger falls to his knees in despair, swearing that he is telling the absolute truth, no matter how monstrous it may be. Lord Augustus slowly puts all the facts together in his mind, and a cold understanding of the catastrophe that is unfolding appears on his face. The realization of Rain's entire plan hits the conspirator, and he cries out in rage about the young master's ruthlessness. The accomplices look at their leader in complete bewilderment, not understanding the reason for his sudden and furious insight. Gritting his teeth, Lord Augustus begins to explain how Rain had lured them into a trap, first by spreading rumors of gigantic prices. Augustus bitterly explains how rumors of high prices became the bait that attracted grain caravans to the city. Then the Rhine struck through the church, crashing prices and causing a panic that forced merchants to sell at a loss. Lord Roland, in impotent rage, curses the young master, realizing the meanness and genius of his multi-step plan. Unwilling to admit defeat, Lord Augustus, with cold determination, announces a new plan to regain control. The accomplices desperately beg their leader to share a saving strategy to avoid total ruin. Augustus suggests keeping a low profile and holding back grain in order to wait for the people to become desperate and then drive prices sky high again. He looks menacingly at his accomplices, warning that the betrayal of even one of them will lead to the general collapse. Roland, with false loyalty, agrees to the plan, promising to immediately lock up his supplies until better times. Having barely left the hall, the Lord throws away his vows in panic, realizing that he needs to sell everything immediately before it's too late. The other conspirators are suspicious of his haste, and their fragile alliance begins to crack at the seams from distrust. The faithful assistant swears to Augustus not to sell the grain, not realizing that the rules of the game have changed. The Lord kicks his subordinate in rage, because while they hesitate, their former allies are already selling everything behind their backs. Augustus screams desperately, ordering that everything down to the last grain be sold immediately, so as not to be left with nothing. The Holy Virgin anxiously asks Rain if this adventure will be enough to save her people from the hungry winter. Ayuria looks at the mountains of bags in bewilderment, not understanding why the more they sell, the richer they become. Rain reveals the secret with a satisfied smile, explaining how selling at the peak and buying at the bottom will make them a fortune. The messenger bursts in with news of a final collapse in prices, as now 1 gold coin can buy 3 sacks. The young man reminds the abbess of her doubts with a grin, because now he can offer her even more grain. With the enemies defeated, the hero finally turns to the Holy Maiden to move on to the main goal of their union. Ayuria asks with apprehension and curiosity what kind of deal the young man wants to make with the elven tribe. The hero makes an incredibly bold offer, promising the elves any deal, and Ayuria cannot believe her ears. The young man declares with absolute confidence his readiness to satisfy any need of the elven people. The Holy Virgin understands the seriousness of the proposal and insists on meeting with the queen, to which Rain eagerly agrees. The abbess delivers a fateful letter for the queen, and the little elf rushes to fulfill an important assignment. The hero thoughtfully sums up the results, realizing that the ruined nobility of Ealing has dropped out of the big game for a long time. In his thoughts, a new balance of power is being formed, where the Mages Guild is already subjugated, and the church is about to swear allegiance. Now the main goal of the reign is the army and taxes in the hands of Lord Vladerick, because by capturing them, he will squeeze the enemy in a steel vice. Selena interrupts the gentleman's intense thoughts with tenderness and concern, bringing him back to reality. The girl carefully offers her help to the tired young man so that he can finally relax after a difficult battle. The young man tries to deny his fatigue, but still succumbs to her tender care, allowing himself a moment of peace. The ruined merchant angrily curses the soldiers who are hiding behind the name of the Grand Duke. The merchant, in a rage, shouts that he is ready to put up with the losses, but not with the brazen robbery by the soldiers on the way back. The merchant tries to reach out to Ayuria and Rain, hinting that even the Grand Duke is just a man with his weaknesses. Rain steps forward calmly, and his confident demeanor causes the merchant and his companion to freeze in tense anticipation. The sudden appearance of the young man frightens the merchant, and he points at him in fear, demanding that he give his name. The hero, with a predatory smile, introduces himself as a man who has come to make a very profitable deal with them. The merchant, with horror and disgust, reveals to Rain the terrible secret of the Eldarin family, because their real business is human trafficking. Rain is irritated to realize that kidnapping people deprives him of needed labor, which directly ruins his own plans. The young man decides that the first priority is to take control of the border guards in order to stop chaos and foreign influence. The merchant indignantly complains to Rain about the newly raised duties, since people had already paid once when leaving the city. The border guard explains the difference between the duties with a cheeky grin, enjoying his power and impunity. Lillian is furious and accuses the guard of lying because the rules used to be completely different and fair. The soldier scornfully gives the girl an ultimatum, offering to either pay an exorbitant tribute or get out. The sum of 1 gold coin seems like a real robbery, and Lillian, in despair, shouts out accusations of theft. Hearing Rain's voice, the girl reluctantly agrees to pay, fully trusting her older brother's hidden plan. Feeling his power, the guard orders all passengers to immediately leave the carriage for a humiliating search. The post commander loudly announces the need for a search, covering up his arbitrariness with official instructions. The hero and Selena get out of the carriage, and the young man with icy calm allows them to begin the search. The guard's face distorts with horror when he finally recognizes the mysterious stranger as his new master. Rain looks with disgust at Trist, who is trembling behind him, surprised by the old slave trader's impudence. Trist is horrified to discover that these guards are former bandits, placed here by the Ederin family to control the supply of people. The chief of the guard angrily reminds Trist of an old debt for which he received a severe reprimand from his superiors. The guard angrily beats Trist, demanding that he return the money immediately and threatening not to let him leave the city. Trist clutches his head in despair, not believing what is happening and swearing that he has already paid the required amount. The guard scornfully declares that the old agreements mean nothing, and now no one will pass without 5 gold pieces. The spearhead rests on Trista, and the guard maliciously reminds him that he won't get out of here without money. Rain stops the spear, icily surprised by the too low tariff and causing shock in the guard. The guard steps back in confusion, demanding that the impudent fellow state his name and not understanding where he came from. The guard's gaze suddenly catches on Selena, and he notes with surprise the appearance of such a beautiful girl in the city. Trist, trying to curry favor with Rain, fussily offers the guards money, calling them his trading friends. The guard greedily accepts the bag of gold, mockingly calling the bribe taker an honest comrade. The chief of the guard smugly orders the money to be put aside, not noticing that his insolence has already signed his death sentence. Blinded by lust, the guard pesters Selena, unaware of the mortal danger he has brought upon himself. Rain stops the guard's hand with icy contempt, passing the verdict that such people are hopeless and not fit even to be slaves. The enraged, impudent man lunges at the young man, not realizing that he has just made the biggest mistake of his life. Selena instantly stands up to defend her master, and her cold gaze does not bode well for the arrogant bandit. In an instant, all the guards are defeated, and their captain lies ingloriously on the ground, unable to believe what has happened. The hero gives a ruthless order to kill all those who resist and change the guard, shocking Lillian with his cruelty. The girl accepts the order with humility, ready to fulfill the will of her master without hesitation. The remaining guards flee in panic, and Selena watches their flight with cold indifference. The soldiers run in panic, begging for salvation from an invisible threat. A sudden blow interrupts the cry for help, dooming one of the fugitives to death. The girl single-handedly exterminates an entire squad, demonstrating inhuman strength. Rain analyzes the data of the fallen, doubting their true affiliation. The father instructs the young man to be careful in enemy territory to avoid conflict. The young man realizes that he miraculously escaped defeat by revealing a hidden threat. The heroine looks coldly at her victim, leaving no chance for survival. An angry cry echoes across the border, demanding an answer for the chaos that has been created. The appearance of General Caesar gives the surviving soldiers hope for salvation. The guy assesses the arriving general, seeing him not as an ally, but as an incredibly gifted enemy. The general begins an interrogation, trying to find out the guy's identity and intentions. Caesar asks for answers with distrust, surprised by the stranger's knowledge. Rain calmly reveals her connection to a powerful family, changing the balance of power. The realization of the young man's high status plunges the general and the soldiers into real horror. Caesar's memory recalls a letter from his brother ordering him to protect the young master. The memory of the bribe shows what price the general paid for his position. Behind the mask of gratitude, Caesar hides the bitterness and weight of the commitment he has made. Mysterious voices whisper to the general about the neglect that the young man suffers. Invisible puppeteers tempt Caesar, hinting at power worthy of talent. In a tense dialogue, the hero defiantly confirms his right to what he deserves. Caesar chooses ambition, declaring Rain an imposter and preparing to attack. The general gives the order to kill the young man, tempting the soldiers with a generous reward for betrayal. The heroine, in a rage, accuses the general of open rebellion, not believing in such insolence. The subordinates, in horror, begs Caesar to come to his senses, foreseeing the collapse of the entire family. The general coldly reminds his subordinates that they are already criminals, having trapped them. Caesar justifies the betrayal by telling of Rhine's cruelty and the destroyed families. The general paints a picture of a rich life before the soldiers, demanding the head of a young man in exchange. Caesar issues an ultimatum, leaving the soldiers no choice but to submit or die. Panic and doubt are growing among the soldiers, as the order is tantamount to suicide. The girl realizes with horror that the general's convincing speeches have broken the will of the soldiers. The soldiers, having chosen a side, surround the young man and woman, ready for a mortal fight. Caesar grins and offers Rain the last word, savoring the moment of power. The hero, with icy calm, offers the traitors a chance for forgiveness, knowing his strength. Blinded by promises, the soldiers rush into the attack, not seeing the obvious threat. The heroine gets rid of her restrictive clothes, preparing to enter the battle without restrictions. The girl bursts into a crowd of enemies, turning into a deadly whirlwind. The deadly dance of the maid leaves no chance for the attackers to survive. Every movement of the girl is precise and deadly. She mercilessly strikes down her enemies. Rain's companion demonstrates incredible skill, easily dispatching her opponents. The young man throws back the enemy without any visible effort, showing the true level of power. The young man, with cold confidence, gives the general one last chance to come to his senses. Blinded by rage, Caesar doubles the bet, promising mountains of gold for the boy's head. The thirst for profit finally clouds the soldiers' minds, and they rush into battle again. The girl with icy calm puts an end to the life of another attacker. With a graceful and deadly kick, the heroine sends the enemy flying. Like a hurricane, Rain's companion rushes through the ranks of enemies, sowing chaos. In desperation, the general calls upon the mages to stop the invincible warrior. A powerful stream of ice magic rushes towards the girl, bringing with it the cold. Caesar triumphs, considering the heroine immobilized, and orders an attack on Rhine. The soldiers, believing in the vulnerability of the target, rush towards the young man, who they consider defenseless. Rain grins as he prepares to demonstrate the power of his mysterious weapon. A strange device like a plug enters the ground, charging it with electricity. Lightning bolts pierce the attacking soldiers, causing them to writhe in agony. The survivors, in horror, recognize the magic of thunder, realizing the hopelessness of their situation. The young man thinks ironically that this scene would be an excellent lesson in safety. Caesar shouts furiously at the frozen soldiers, not understanding the reason for their delay. One of the subordinates, in a panic, warns the general about forbidden magic, dooming himself. A sudden stroke of blood cuts short the life of a soldier who dared to doubt. A mysterious figure issues a death sentence to anyone who disobeys the order. The general, suppressing his fear, refuses to believe in defeat and again drives his men into the attack. The surviving soldier looks around in complete confusion. The heroine anxiously points out to the guy the soldiers who survived the attack. The guy calmly admits that he was just testing the weapon and the energy ran out. Realizing her vulnerability, the girl tries to take the young man away from the dangerous place. The young man, with a mysterious smile, assures that the general has no chance of escape. Caesar, seeing a false opportunity, in desperation again throws his men into the attack. Suddenly, a powerful discharge falls from the sky, stopping the advance. The appearance of the Wizards Guild leaves Caesar in complete shock and despair. A powerful woman appears in a halo of lightning, addressing the general with disdain. A powerful sorceress, surrounded by magicians, respectfully reports to the young man about her arrival. The young man notes with relief that help arrived at the most opportune moment. The young man promises to explain everything after he deals with the traitor. The powerful sorceress readily accepts the order and prepares to attack. The leader of the mages gives a dire order to help Rain crush the rebels. The subordinate mages, in a single impulse, prepare a devastating spell. The general's soldiers panic and beg for mercy, realizing their fatal mistake. Cornered, Caesar, in a last rage, decides to drag the boy away with him. The general launches a suicide attack, raising his sword for the final blow. The young man's faithful companion instantly blocks the blade's path, saving her master. Caesar realizes with horror that the underestimated girl has gotten too close. The deadly maid easily parries the general's desperate attack, putting an end to the battle. The defeated Caesar, broken and exhausted, falls to his knees before the victors. After some time, the young man calmly studies the documents, as if there had been no mortal combat. Rain and her companion begin interrogating the tied-up general, taking full control of the situation. The young man coldly exposes the general's financial machinations, leaving him in complete shock. The hero admits that he knew about the betrayal in advance and was only waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The prisoner tries to find a way out, wondering what Rain will do with the incriminating evidence against the Lord. The guy calmly lays out his far-sighted plan, which the general is unable to comprehend. Caesar bursts out laughing, confident in the unbreakable power of the nobility over their master. The young man makes his final verdict, dividing the world into the living and the dead. The general is horrified to realize that the young man is planning a bloody purge among the nobility. The prisoner's face was frozen in mortal horror from the realization of his complete helplessness. The young man, with a grin, offers the nobility a choice: death or unconditional submission. Rain is already calculating future moves, anticipating the autumn invasion of Duke Soren's troops. The hero's thoughts flash with an urgent task: to strengthen the city walls before the coming war. The boy thinks with relief about the West, where the presence of the Holy Mist guarantees peace with the elves. A map unfolds before the young man's mind's eye as his assistant reports on the returned funds. The girl offers a practical solution: reward the loyal guards and deal with the rest. The young man, with a satisfied smile, approves of his faithful assistant's plan. Miss Selina's sudden appearance causes surprise and slight irritation in her faithful companion. The young man formally thanks the head of the guild for a job well done. Selina, with a beaming smile, assures that it is a pleasure to serve the young master. A curious sorceress asks to explain the operating principle of a mysterious non-magical weapon. The young man, with a gentle smile, promises to reveal his engineering secrets along the way. Suddenly, an old magician comes running with news of a catastrophe, breaking the moment of calm. The head of the guild angrily demands an immediate explanation from the magician about what is happening. The old man, in despair, reports the betrayal of the ruler Elderic and the capture of the city. The news of the uprising takes the powerful sorceress by surprise. A predatory gleam flashes in Rain's eyes as the long-awaited plan finally works. The girl anxiously reminds that all the magicians have left the city, leaving it defenseless. Rain states with cold confidence that the rebellion was doomed from the very beginning. The young man speaks condescendingly to Elderic, mockingly inquiring about the enemy's situation. The rebellious ruler greets the hero with feigned self-confidence, unaware of the trap. The young man gets to the point, demanding that the traitor answer for his treachery against his father. Elderic explodes from accumulated resentment, shouting accusations of undeserved exile. A handshake comes to mind, a symbol of a past union and great hopes. A flashback shows how Rain's father neglected his comrade, leaving him in the shadows. The clenched fist reveals all the bitterness from years of humiliation and rejected requests. The traitor, in a rage, shifts the blame, blaming everything on the coldness and insensitivity of the ruler. Elderic states that his comrades are not rebelling, but are taking their well-deserved reward by force. The young man rejects the traitor's pathetic excuses with disappointment, considering them a boring argument. Rain, with icy calm, issues an ultimatum, offering the rebels the illusion of choice. Elderic's minions burst into laughter, taking the generous sentence as a sign of weakness. The rebellious ruler scoffs at empty threats, fully confident in his own impregnability. The traitor's overconfident ally makes a bold bet, trying to corner the guy. The terms of the bet sound like a death sentence. Failure means complete and unconditional surrender. The young man calmly asks about his reward, not doubting his victory. Elderic, in a fit of arrogance, frivolously agrees to any conditions in case of loss. The henchman issues a challenge with a predatory grin, expecting Rain to accept a bet that is clearly losing. The faithful sorceress tries to dissuade the master from a reckless argument, suggesting that he act more carefully. The devoted companion advises the master to wait for reinforcements and not to take unnecessary risks. The rebels openly mock him, provoking the young man to accept a bet that he knows he will lose. Rain accepts the challenge with a cold grin, intending to humiliate his arrogant enemies. Elderic seals the deal in front of the crowd, unaware that he has fallen into an elaborate trap. The traitor, with a cunning look, decides to add a final, decisive condition to the concluded bet. The rebel boastfully declares that the Imperial army will not be able to come to the rescue in 3 days. Elderic laughs maliciously, anticipating the enemy army capturing the young master. The powerful sorceress expresses doubt that even with magic they will be able to break through the walls. The loyal soldier begs the young man to retreat south and await safe reinforcements. The hero maintains an icy calm because he considers the real threat not to be the walls, but the Imperial army. Rain checks with Leia to see if the wood and hay are ready to carry out the cunning plan. The assistant reports with a smile that she is fully prepared and that a lake has been found nearby. The young man orders Selena to use ice magic to cool the water. Both companions are in sweet bewilderment, not understanding the connection between the plan and the storming of the walls. The hero declares with unshakable confidence that the wall will fall in just 3 days. A guy on a horse leads an army into attack, radiating absolute determination. Soldiers with bundles of hay fearlessly rush towards the enemy fortress. The warrior, under a hail of arrows, covers himself with a shield without dropping his strange burden. The rebel ruler is at a loss to understand the purpose of an unarmed attack. The defenders watch in amazement as the attackers simply dump the hay against the walls and retreat. Elderic, furious, demands an explanation from his subordinate, unable to understand the enemy's absurd tactics. The confused soldier makes a ridiculous guess about trying to set fire to the stone wall. An angry ruler takes it out on his assistant for his crazy idea about burning stones. The assistant, in despair, admits that he cannot find any other logical explanation for what is happening. The messenger's panicked cry confirms the crazy guess, causing Elderic to freeze in bewilderment. The defenders of the fortress watch in horror as a real flame flares up at the foot of the walls. Elderic bursts into malicious laughter, considering the young master a complete idiot. The archer, confused, asks for orders, offering to put out the fire with magic or shoot the enemy. The rebel arrogantly orders that the mages be spared, not wanting to waste his trump cards on a stupid trick. The ruler forbids the waste of arrows and magic, confident in the futility of the attack. Elderic gloats, anticipating the boy's public humiliation in 3 days. In the city lord's luxurious estate, the atmosphere is calm as he awaits the report. A subordinate reports that the enemy has stopped the useless fires near the walls. The ruler mocks the stupidity of his enemy, who burned all the firewood for the winter. The rebel, with a predatory grin, calls on his comrades to witness the idiot's surrender. On the 3rd day, everyone is confident of the Lord's victory because the red-hot wall is impregnable. Elderic, from the heights of the walls, mockingly suggests that the hero put out the fire and surrender. Rain gives the nobility one last chance, offering a choice between immediate surrender and death. The traitor, perplexed, reminds the guy of the terms of the bet, considering him a madman. A young man in front of the formation reminds them of the debt of honor, driving the enemy into a trap. The rebels laugh smugly, confident that the hero will not dare break his word. Rain, looking tired, warns that the consequences of their stubbornness will be dire. Obeying the order, Selena resolutely steps towards the burning wall, preparing to attack. A powerful sorceress gathers in her hands the crushing power of the thunder element. The defenders panic and call for mages as a magical storm gathers above them. A huge bolt of lightning shoots into the sky, carrying with it destructive force. The terrified rebel mages hastily create a barrier, trying to repel the attack. Elderic bursts into laughter, mocking the enemy guild sorceress's crooked shot. A sudden downpour catches the ruler off guard, cutting off his smug laughter mid-sentence. The young man gives the order for the final assault with fierce determination, because everything is going according to plan. Warriors with buckets of ice water fearlessly rush into a decisive attack on the fortress. The young man and the maid carefully support the sorceress, who is exhausted after a powerful spell. The hero tenderly thanks Selena, because the rain he caused was an unexpected bonus to the plan. The young man confidently reassures the girl, predicting the complete destruction of the ice wall. An alarmed Leia yells at the master to turn around, noticing a frightening change in the wall. Ice-cold water from buckets mercilessly falls on the hot stones of the fortress. Elderic is overcome with horror by the ominous crackling sound, as only powerful mages can achieve such an effect. Disbelief and panic grip the rebels as they realize that the impenetrable wall is crumbling. The ruler, screaming in horror, flies down along with the rubble of the wall that collapsed under his feet. Rain points triumphantly towards the breach, giving the order for a final, crushing attack. The young man gives a merciless order not to spare those who dare to resist. Loyal soldiers rush into the breach with a battle cry, ready to carry out the will of the commander. Selena is shocked to realize that even she would not be able to create such destruction. Rain calmly informs the sorceress that the battle is over and suggests that she go home. Defeated, Elderic clings in despair to the elusive hope of salvation. The sudden appearance of former allies blocks the traitor's escape. The nobility coldly informs the ruler that they will make him a scapegoat for the sake of their own survival. A huge army triumphantly enters the city to the delighted cries of the inhabitants. The townspeople admire the genius of the commander, who destroyed the wall in 3 days without losses. The enchanted heroine begs the young man to reveal the secret of the brilliant plan. Having succumbed to the sorceress's touching persuasion, the hero reluctantly agrees to reveal his secret. The young man with a mysterious smile begins his explanation, referring to a physical principle. Mighty Selena is completely confused because scientific terms are completely unfamiliar to her. The hero clearly demonstrates how a sharp change in temperature causes objects to collapse. Rain interrupts the lecture, promising to finish the story after dealing with the captured idiot. The young man looks with contempt at the defeated enemy, not believing in his repentance. The defeated nobleman cries out to his master in despair, trying to evoke pity. The traitor tries to beg for forgiveness, assuring that he was deceived and long ago went over to the hero's side. The comrades cowardly pick up on the lie, playing out a performance with accusations against Elderic. The guy reminded them with cold contempt that he had given them 2 chances which they had not taken. In a last desperate attempt to save himself, the nobleman offers all his family property. The hero, with icy calm, retorts that their riches will go to him in any case. The traitors, in horror, accuse the young man of tyranny, not believing in such cruelty. The young man cynically notes that they are driven only by self-interest, not justice. Rain gives the order to arrest the fools, condemning them to inevitable punishment. Elderic points in horror at the cloaked man, not believing that he broke through the wall. The masked man is stunned, unable to understand how the enemy managed to do the impossible. The ruler is struck by a realization as he recalls the report of the burning and collapsed wall. The hooded stranger vehemently denies what he heard, considering it complete nonsense. The masked character cannot accept the idea that the city fell because of such a simple trick. The masked character desperately clings to the idea of magic, unwilling to believe in the simplicity of his defeat. Elderic shakes his accomplice in panic, begging him to run before the hero's army cuts off all routes. The sudden appearance of Rain with an icy grin blocks the conspirators' path to retreat. Complete shock paralyzes the traitors, who do not understand how their sworn enemy ended up right behind them. The young man mockingly thanks his enemies for their cowardice, which opened the way for him. The youth reveals that their soldiers surrendered without a fight after seeing the shameful flight of their commanders. The hero looks shrewdly at the mysterious stranger, trying to figure out what the mask hides. The hooded man arrogantly declares that the Imperial army will soon wipe the winner off the face of the earth. The conspirator is furious when he realizes that Rain's brilliant plan has deprived them of life-saving reinforcements. The enemy uses a teleportation scroll, and the boy, in desperation, orders Leia to stop the fugitive. A sudden flash interrupts the teleportation, throwing the masked man back. 2 knives thrown with incredible speed thwart the escape attempt. The hood falls away, revealing a scarred face filled with cold fury beneath the mask. Leia is amazed to recognize the fugitive as someone from her past. Looking at Rain with hatred, the enemy activates the second scroll, not giving up on his attempts to escape. The conspirator vanishes into thin air, leaving behind only an ominous promise to return. The girl blames herself for the mistake, but the young man calmly assures her that he foresaw this outcome. The young man thoughtfully notes how dangerous it is to fight an opponent without knowing his identity. The maid suddenly has an idea and stuns her master with the announcement that she knows the fugitive. Leia reveals the identity of the enemy, calling him Eldrin, a vile traitor from the past. The hero thoughtfully connects the names, suspecting a relationship between the escaped Eldrin and the executed Adrian. The maid confirms the guess, revealing that the fugitive was the head of an entire Eldrin clan. The girl tells of betrayal, how he rejected the ideals of his master and went over to the enemy. An agitated Selena interrupts them, reminding them of the impending threat from the Orvis Empire. The sorceress, in despair, admits that even magic is powerless against the destruction caused by the young man. The guy calms the girl down with disarming confidence, promising to find a way out of the situation. The hero and his companions look at the huge crowd, frozen in anticipation. The heroine doubtfully ponders what words the young man is going to use to prevent the inevitable panic. The young man suddenly uses a megaphone, deafening everyone around him and demanding attention. Having captured everyone's attention, the guy prepares to give a speech on which everything depends. Rain shocks the crowd by announcing the imminent arrival of an enemy army. The news throws the townspeople into panic and causes a wave of horror. Selena is horrified and does not understand why the hero is deliberately sowing panic among people. Residents remember the previous attack in despair, not understanding why the enemy has returned. Fear wins out, and the townspeople, despite their regrets, decide to flee. The girl reproaches the young man for his impulsiveness, but he calmly awaits an explanation. The heroine explains that untrained people instinctively seek protection and cannot remain calm. The young man calmly interrupts her, making it clear that his companion's conclusions are wrong. The guy shares his tough philosophy, where the commander's calm is more important than the soldier's calm. The hero reads an insulting letter from an enemy to incite anger in people instead of fear. An insulting letter from an enemy turns the fear of the crowd into righteous anger. Rhine challenges the people, touching their pride and awakening their fighting spirit. People united by their common humiliation roar with determination to fight back against the invaders. A wave of furious courage overwhelms the townspeople, ready to fight to the last drop of blood. Seeing their determination, Rain vows to lead the people to victory and drive out the invaders. After a stormy speech, silence falls on Lord Aisling's estate, where the hero must make a decision. Caring Leia tries to persuade the tired young man to rest for at least a moment. The guy refuses to rest, realizing that every minute counts in the face of an imminent threat. Leia, full of doubts, carefully asks the gentleman about the meaning of his speech today. The hero coldly admits that his fiery speech was just a lie to control the crowd. Leia, with tears in her eyes, begs her master to allow her to save him, unable to bear the sight of the impending threat. Rain reassures the girl, telling her about the evacuation plan and his unwavering determination to fight. The young man's gaze falls on the mysterious book, and a sudden idea lights up his face. A young man hopefully asks a maid about a mysterious dark green divine oil. The heroine hesitantly recalls that it is a flammable substance that witches used for rituals. Reading about the properties of oil causes the guy to have an epiphany, and he guesses the essence of the discovery. The hero is struck by a brilliant idea and impatiently demands to see the oil from the pantry. A boy and a girl rush to a guarded door, behind which their only salvation may be hidden. Rain gives a decisive order to the soldiers to immediately find the barrel with the precious substance. The young man sternly warns about the danger of fire, hinting at the incredible power of the resource found. Open chests of gold become irrefutable evidence of years of corruption. In the face of untold riches, the young man already sees the future prosperity that will come after victory. The soldiers roll out the heavy barrels with difficulty, reporting the successful completion of the search. Rain rushes towards the found barrel with childish delight, anticipating triumph. Under the lid of the barrel there is a mysterious liquid, confirming the hero's boldest guess. A devilish grin lights up the guy's face because he now holds the key to saving the entire city in his hands. The scene suddenly shifts to a sinister military camp of the enemy Orvis Empire. The spies who failed the mission report their failure and disgrace to the powerful Lord Castile. Icy contempt shines through the Lord's gaze, who had expected failure, but not such pathetic incompetence. The formidable Grand Duke Castile Waldron delivers his verdict, shocked at the speed of the city's loss. The subordinate desperately makes excuses, blaming the loss on Rain's forbidden spell. The news of magic makes Castile think about betrayal for the sake of saving someone else's son. The spies confidently convince the Lord that the destroyed wall is the perfect chance for an attack. The Duke dismisses the losers with disdain, making it clear that he does not need their advice. Aldwin, confused, tries to remind them of their joint plan, but is met with cold indifference. Castile, with a sinister grin, reveals the spy's true identity, declaring him in exile. The scroll thrown on the floor becomes a symbol of final and irrevocable betrayal. Realizing that he has been used, Aldwin explodes in rage and impotent anger. The Duke, without a shadow of a doubt, gives the order to seize his former ally and throw him into prison. The traitor's desperate cries are drowned out by the silence as the guards lead him away. Left alone, Eldrick is horrified to realize that the same fate awaits him as his betrayed partner. Lord Castile weighs the fate of the traitor, trembling with fear, with icy calm. In a desperate plea for mercy, the man offers a secret that could change the power of the entire empire. The scene changes abruptly, transporting us to the majestic and bright main hall of Terlandia. Enter Priscilla Zagar, Rain's powerful sister and ruler of these lands. Gwen's assistant gives the lady a letter from Rain, not knowing what kind of storm it will cause. Reading the letter awakens in the girl tender memories of her brother's carefree childhood. A sudden rage distorts Priscilla's face, and she orders the mysterious Velas Holker to be summoned. Faithful Gwen accepts the order without complaint, ready to carry it out immediately. The arriving man anxiously tries to find out from the elder miss the reason for her anger. Priscilla, with icy contempt, accuses Velas of unthinkable insolence and preparing an uprising. The man panics and denies the accusations, citing past collaboration and the lack of reason to rebel. The girl throws down the letter in a rage, declaring that the evidence is irrefutable and that excuses are pointless. After reading the fake letter, Velas freezes in horror, realizing the scale of the setup. The ruler pierces the accused with an icy gaze, silently demanding an answer to her accusations. In desperation, the man tries to shift all the blame onto a certain Caesar protecting the Hulker family. He admits to the correspondence, but swears that he was only trying to bring a fool to his senses and asks for leniency. Velas's sincere reaction makes Priscilla doubt his guilt, raising suspicion. Seeing a shadow of doubt, the man, with tears in his eyes, begs for his family to be given a chance to prove their loyalty. The lady weighs the pleas coldly, maintaining an impassive expression on her face and complete control over the situation. In a desperate attempt to prove his loyalty, Velas offers his only daughter Rosalind as commander of the army. The ruler coldly weighs the proposal, reminding her of the terrible price of possible failure for the Hulker family. The man, kneeling, assures of the family's boundless devotion, ready to make any sacrifice for the sake of the mistress. Remembering the past good deed, Velas begs even more desperately for a chance to prove their loyalty. Having made her decision, the ruler gives Gwen an icy order to establish covert surveillance on Rosalind. The girl's gaze becomes steely, and she delivers a merciless verdict in case of the slightest mistake. Meanwhile, the transformed Essling meets the enemy with new, impregnable walls and a moat. Lord Castle looks out over the changed city with the traitor Elderic, assessing the new defenses. The traitor ingratiatingly promises the Lord an easy victory as soon as he breaks through the defense. The man notes with growing alarm that Rain has not only restored the wall with magic, but is also digging a new moat. Grand Duke Castile bursts out laughing, considering Rain's decision to waste magic on the wall the height of stupidity. Elderic looks at the jubilant lord in bewilderment, not understanding the reason for joy in the face of increased defense. The new wall hides a fatal vulnerability, as the nearby lowland negates all fortifications. The Duke explains that mages could become a decisive force in defense, repelling any attacks. Now the mages of the Rain are exhausted, because all their precious energy went into the stone, leaving the city defenseless. The traitor ingratiatingly admires the Lord's wisdom, realizing the genius of his simple plan. The soldier suggests going around the fortress and isolating it in order to enter the city without an unnecessary assault. The Duke's icy gaze silences the soldier, for any doubt in his strength is tantamount to an insult. The horrified warrior falls to his knees, trying to explain that he only wanted to avoid unnecessary casualties. The Duke coldly declares that death in battle is inevitable, and this city will only be a training ground for his new recruits. Duke Castile presumptuously flies in to give him a dressing down, anticipating the young master's quick surrender. Rain is desperately looking for a solution as time runs out to complete the system task. The maid interrupts the boy's thoughts with news of the arrival of the Grand Duke and his magicians. Coming out onto the wall, the young man is faced with an arrogant offer from an enemy hovering in the sky. The hero and his soldiers' cheeky laughter echoes throughout the area, mocking Castile's pomposity. The maid, with an imperturbable expression, confirms that this smug fool is the Grand Duke. The Lord is furious at such disrespect, because even Rain's father did not dare to contradict him. The young man looks calmly at his enraged opponent, his cold question full of hidden threat. The Duke moves on to direct threats, promising a bloody massacre in case of refusal to surrender immediately. But Rain turns the tables with a grin, boldly offering the invader his own chance. Rain, with cold confidence, suggests that the enemy get out while he is still alive. Duke Castile notes with disdain that the youth has no understanding of the balance of power. The Lord reminds of his 10,000-strong army, preparing to give an order with one movement of his hand. With an imperious gesture, the Duke issues his final ultimatum, demanding immediate capitulation. Ignoring the threats, Rain calmly orders the maid Leah to teach the impudent man a lesson. The look of the modest-looking girl becomes icy, and a deadly weapon is hidden under her dress. In an instant, the maid turns into a tornado, launching a lightning blade at the enemy. At the last second, the magician manages to create a protective barrier, screaming in horror about the danger. The incredible force of the throw shatters the magic shield into pieces, leaving no chance for defense. The blade leaves a bloody mark on the shocked Duke's face, wiping away all the arrogance from the man. The shocked mage rushes anxiously to the wounded Lord Castile, not believing what has happened. The Duke touches the bleeding wound in silent rage, humiliation boiling inside. Rain, with icy calm, throws out a warning that the next blow will be fatal. The humiliated Duke hastily retreats together with the magician, escaping in shameful flight. The return of the disgraced lord leaves the soldiers unaware of the failure baffled. Blinded by a thirst for revenge, Castile gives the order for an immediate assault, dreaming of a brutal reprisal. One of the warriors dares to object, reminding them of the army's fatigue after the grueling march. The Lord's fury falls upon the soldier, the cry calling into question the very valor of the imperial army. The frightened warrior tries to reason with the commander, pointing out the tactical necessity of preparing for a siege. The Duke's anger turns into hysteria. He accuses his own soldiers of complete incompetence. Trying to justify his haste, Castile claims that a surprise attack will catch the enemy off guard. The soldiers look at the Lord in horror, realizing the folly of his order. Filled with rage, the Duke roars the order for an immediate attack, refusing to listen to objections. In the Orvis Empire camp, there is a deceptive calm before the storm that their commander is preparing. Exhausted by the 3-day march, the soldiers complain of mortal fatigue and the hardships of service. One of the warriors, with a sly smile, intrigues his comrades, promising to tell them something interesting. The man happily reports that he saw a sheep being chased, which means there will be a hearty dinner today. The soldiers explode with delight, anticipating their first proper meal in days. A sudden order from the commander to gather and prepare for an attack cuts short their short-lived joy. The warriors protest in despair, because the thought of fighting on an empty stomach seems unbearable to them. The commander harshly suppresses the grumbling, demanding, unquestioning obedience from the exhausted soldiers. There is a tense atmosphere on the city wall as the assistant awaits the order to act from Rain. Observing the enemy, the young man wonders about the weakness of the renowned Orvis army. The veteran confirms with a heavy voice that he once dealt with these formidable warriors. Even the defenders find it funny to see the attacking soldiers staggering from weakness. An experienced warrior gives his verdict. Before them is not a seasoned army, but hungry, inexperienced youths. Rhine is completely perplexed. The very idea of soldiers starving before an attack seems wild. The subordinate puts forward the first version, suggesting a banal shortage of food in the enemy camp. The guy's face turns icy. He feels that there is something more sinister behind this. A terrible guess is revealed. The Grand Duke is using his people as human shields and cannon fodder. Righteous anger fills Rain at the thought of how a ruler can do this to his own people. The assistant bitterly explains that most leaders, unlike the youth, are as cruel as Duke Castile. Cold determination fills the guy. If the enemy considers people cannon fodder, then there will be no mercy. The subordinate tensely awaits the order, knowing that they have enough arrows to destroy the recruits. An unexpected smile appears on the young man's face. His decision not to shoot puzzles his comrade. Rain gives a new order to Celine, calling on all the city's mages to unleash the power of the ice element on the enemy. The girl unleashes a devastating spell, creating dense, dark clouds of icy wind. Lord Castile bursts out laughing, calling Rain a complete idiot for wasting magic on new recruits. The commander looks at his duke in bewilderment, not understanding the reason for such joy. Castile smugly reveals his cunning plan, where the youths were merely bait for arrows. Castile anticipates an easy victory once the defender's magic wears down under the onslaught of the suicide bombers. The subordinates are delighted with Lord Castile's genius, showering the man with flattery. The Duke already sees in his fantasies a humiliated Rain Edgar kneeling in chains. A sudden icy wind causes panic and confusion among the attacking soldiers. The recruits scatter in terror, their pitiful cries for mercy drowned out by the howl of the elements. One of the warriors, in a fit of insane fear, hugs a tree, begging for salvation. Two soldiers huddle against a pole in a daze, unable to believe the nightmare that is unfolding. The commander, in desperation, tries to discipline the cowardly recruits who have forgotten about their duty. Selena doubts that a simple icy wind will be enough to stop the enemy army. The girl suggests strengthening the attack by adding more deadly lightning magic to the wind. Rain reveals his simple and ingenious plan, because hunger and cold have always been the main enemies of soldiers. The young man watches with a grin as the vaunted Orvis army can't even stand up straight. The frozen recruits cry from cold and despair, having completely lost the will to fight. The commander's rage is powerless against panic. He can only heap curses on the useless soldiers. A desperate captain on horseback tries to rouse his completely demoralized warriors to attack. The soldiers, with tears in their eyes, beg the captain to retreat, complaining of unbearable cold and hunger. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, the commander sends a messenger to Castile with a report of the failure. A messenger arrives at headquarters in a hurry, bringing news of a disaster on the front lines. As the messenger enters the Lord's warm tent, the dull discontent of the hungry soldiers is growing outside. The messenger reports the complete failure of the attack and, on his knees, begs the Duke to give the order to retreat. Castile slams his fist down on the table in rage, unable to contain his contempt for his cowardly soldiers. The Duke contemptuously humiliates the messenger, considering the man unworthy of bearing the title of soldier of the empire. In response to pleas for food, the ruthless lord orders the execution of the soldier who dared to object. Tired of the incompetence of his subordinates, Castile decides to take command into his own hands. The loyal commander tries to dissuade the duke from taking a risky step, assuring him of his loyalty. The man accepts the flattery with a smug grin, reveling in his own supposed genius. The lord gives a new order to the mages, intending to create a path for his cavalry right across the water. The earth mages obey the order, raising stone columns from the water for the future bridge. Before the eyes of the astonished defenders, a huge stone bridge appears across the river. Obsessed with revenge, Castile throws all his forces into the attack, promising a reward for Rain's head. Amidst the cries of rage, the Orvis Empire cavalry rushes across the stone bridge to storm the city. A comrade anxiously informs Rain of the beginning of a full-scale attack, but the young man remains unperturbed. With icy calm, the young man gives Leia the order to throw some rubbish straight into the ditch. The guy clarifies his plan, ordering the girl to block both passages on either side of the ditch. While the defenders are pouring barrels of oil into the ditch, the enemy cavalry is already approaching the walls. The horsemen rush into the city with war cries, unaware of the deadly trap beneath their horses' hooves. At this time, a detachment led by the brave warrior Rosalind Holker is rushing towards the city at full speed. The girl's memory recalls her father's order, on which the fate of the family and the life of Mr. Rain depend. The subordinate begs Rosalind to rest, because they have been riding non-stop for 3 days already. The heroine anxiously urges the detachment on. She is concerned with only one question: how much longer is it to Essling? A subordinate informs Rosalind that they are only a day away from their destination, but the tension only increases. The girl demands a map. Her determination leaves no doubt about the necessity of a risky maneuver. Studying the map, the heroine realizes that Rain is trapped, but remembers his trick with the food. The warrior abruptly stops her horse, making a bold and unexpected decision for everyone. Rosalind calls out to the mysterious Nox, revealing the surveillance and demanding immediate negotiations. The dark mage Nox Ulda appears out of nowhere, his appearance shrouded in an ominous purple aura. The loyal guards grab their weapons in panic, ready to defend their mistress from the unknown threat. The girl remains icy calm. She is not surprised by the appearance of this mysterious man. The magician impatiently demands an explanation from the warrior. His time is clearly valuable. Rosalind reveals her daring plan and asks for help from the spy, knowing that he has been sent to follow her. Nox coldly states that his mission is not to help, but to kill Rosalind at the slightest threat to Rain. The heroine, with a sly smile, reminds the magician that their common goal is the safety of the master. Intrigued, Nox Ulda finally gives in, his curiosity outweighing his original orders. The girl reveals her plan of attack. She intends to bypass the enemy and strike at the rear of the Orvis army. Rosalind tasks the mage with a deadly task: block the river and wait for the signal to flood. With a cruel grin, the warrior admits that she is going to drown all the dogs of the Empire in a turbulent stream. Meanwhile, in the elven capital of Varshal, a risky alliance full of hopes and doubts is being discussed. The elven queen asks her advisor's opinion on the upcoming negotiations with humans. The advisor speaks with disdain about people, considering them greedy and unprincipled creatures. The ruler bitterly reminds us of the famine, because without outside help, the elves will not be able to survive. Cillian bitterly reminds that dependence on humans leaves elves with no choice. The queen turns to Eoria, as only the nun has personally seen the new mayor of Essling. The girl describes the young man in confusion, having difficulty choosing words between meanness and genius. The nun enthusiastically tells how, thanks to the guy's advice, the elves saved money and got food. Cillian is intrigued, his disdain for humans giving way to genuine interest in the new mayor. The advisor listens to Eoria's story with bewilderment, not believing in the existence of an intelligent person. The elf recalls the constant autumn wars, doubting the sincerity of people's intentions. The advisor sets a harsh condition for Eoria. The deal will only take place if the wonderful mayor survives. The ruler interrupts the argument, preparing to announce her final and unexpected decision. The queen decides to go to the battlefield to personally verify the abilities of the new ruler. In a panic, the defenders shower the enemy with arrows, desperately trying to hold the city wall. Leah looks at the young master with concern as he calmly gives the order to shoot. The young man explains with icy calm that they need to wait for Castile himself. The guy's look is full of determination because they only have one chance and Castile must not leave. The girl tries to say something in excitement, but is interrupted by the triumphant cry of the enemy. Castile and his soldiers celebrate their victory, confident that the wall has finally fallen under their onslaught. The Duke, with a smug grin, anticipates triumph, unaware of the trap that is being prepared. Blinded by success, the Lord gives the order to attack and capture Rain Edgar alive. Enemy cavalry rushes across the bridge, their battle cries echoing across the water. With cold satisfaction, the young man notes that Castile has crossed the bridge and fallen into a trap. Rain gives a fatal order to Celine, setting her deadly plan into motion. While the guard screams in panic, desperately protecting the young man, the hero himself remains unperturbed. The young man screams desperately at Selena, ordering her to immediately release the fireball into the moat. The girl readily responds, concentrating a low-level fire spell in her hands. The fireball flies straight into the oil-filled ditch, foreshadowing a fiery hell for the enemies. The bridge instantly turns into a fiery hell, devouring the enemy cavalry in roaring flames. Castile, in horror, gives a belated order to his magicians, not believing what is happening. The Duke mistakes this for a final counterattack, ordering his men to endure the barrage of fire. Enemy mages create a powerful water barrier in an attempt to counter the fire element. The subordinate anxiously reminds the Lord of the waste of magical powers, suspecting the enemy of having a hidden plan. Castile laughs smugly, completely ruling out the possibility that the enemy has a hidden agenda. The Duke mistakenly believes that all of the enemy's magic was spent on creating the icy wind. The Lord looks at the fireball with disdain, considering it a last desperate attempt of the enemy. Castile is confident that victory is already in the bag, if only he can withstand this final attack. The Duke laughs triumphantly, because even a simple spell did not achieve its goal. The subordinates enthusiastically praise their lord, calling Castile a true military genius. Known as one of the pillars of the empire, the Duke looks down on the youth, not seeing him as a threat. Suddenly, a deafening explosion is heard, shaking the earth and sky under the feet of the enemy army. Castile looks at the fiery inferno in horror, his self-confidence instantly evaporating. The Lord looks around in panic, unable to understand where this sea of fire came from and what the hell is going on. Castile is horrified and cannot understand where such devastating magic came from in the ditch. The Duke looks on in panic as his soldiers burn alive in the fiery trap. A cold horror pierces the Lord at the thought that all his warriors are doomed to burn to ashes. Looking at the wall, Castile realizes with superstitious fear that this young man is not human. In the shadow on the wall, the Duke sees not the young ruler, but the devil himself in the flesh. Castile is overcome with a chilling horror at the realization that the guy intends to burn 100,000 people alive. The soldier begs for a retreat, and the broken lord, in panic, gives the order to flee. The Duke, in desperation, orders the magicians to put out the fire immediately, but it is too late. The mages bitterly report that all their forces were spent on the barrier, dooming the army to death. Selena looks down on the enemy. Her magic has reached the level of forbidden spells. Selena is shocked to realize that all this forbidden magic was just an illusion created by 2 barrels of oil. Rain watches with cold blood as his enemies panic and try to escape the fiery trap in terror. The young man is pierced by a sharp pain from the realization that in order to protect his people, he urgently needs to develop industry. The young man leaves the rest to Selena with complete confidence, trusting her to complete the defeat of the enemy. The heroine decisively takes command, ordering the magicians to fight back all the soldiers of the Orvis Empire. An exhausted Castile barely escapes from the fiery hell, miraculously making it to the other side. Returning to his camp, the Duke is alarmed to find an ominous emptiness, not understanding where all the soldiers have disappeared to. Suddenly, a blinding flash pierces the sky, and the Lord's face is distorted by a grimace of pure horror. A giant sword falls from the sky, piercing the ground right in front of the stunned Duke. Castile, thrown to the ground, looks in horror at the stranger's feet, unable to understand who this mysterious enemy is. A mysterious white-haired warrior, radiating authority and strength, appears before the defeated Duke. The girl's gaze betrays a long search, hinting at the deeply personal motives of this meeting. Helpless Castile looks at the warrior in horror, not understanding what she is going to do. The girl inexorably approaches the Duke, demanding with chilling authority that he reveal the location of the main forces. Clutching a whip in her hand, the warrior thinks about only one thing. Is Lord Rain safe? The interrogation begins with furious impatience. The girl is ready to do anything to make the Duke talk. Broken by fear, Castile finally screams out the terrible truth. The army is burned by the forbidden magic of the Rhine. The Grand Duke humbly begs for mercy, his pride completely trampled by the warrior's contempt. The girl's rage flares up from such a brazen lie she will not allow herself to be taken for a fool. With cold determination, the warrior orders the Duke to be beaten until he tells the truth. The soldier reports that the stubborn prisoner insists on a crazy story about the forbidden magic of the Rhine. Anger flares up from the report, and a fist falls hard on the table in impotent rage. Priscilla, furious, orders the interrogation to continue, planning a night attack to rescue Mr. Rain. The warrior develops a cunning plan to lure the mage out of the fortress before the decisive assault. The girl makes a bold decision to bypass the fortress and head straight to Ealing, risking everything. A sudden cry about the enemy's approach takes the warrior by surprise, disrupting all plans. The soldiers instantly form a defense around the elder miss, ready to repel any attack. Instead of an enemy army, they are faced with a strange group of people, among whom elves stand out. The girl's gaze fills with icy suspicion at the thought of a possible alliance between the elves and the Orvis Empire. Priscilla scornfully accuses the pathetic elves of treason and conspiracy against Lord Rain. The elf furiously declares that Rain himself requested the meeting, and now they are being unfairly accused. Priscilla rejects the words with a grin, absolutely certain of the elves' betrayal. The tension explodes as the elven archers draw their bowstrings against the warriors' swords. A powerful magical barrier suddenly separates the opponents, stopping the inevitable bloodshed. The appearance of the elven queen brings peace, and she reveals that she has arrived at the invitation of Rain himself. The elf offers a deal, promising to return the young man after the battle if the warrior proves her loyalty. Surrounded by magic, Priscilla is slow to believe, demanding irrefutable proof of an alliance with Rain. The elven queen calmly orders Ayuria to bring the letter, confident that she is right. Ayuria holds out a sealed envelope, the very letter sent by Mr. Rain. Priscilla's gaze freezes on a familiar seal that cannot be counterfeited due to special magic. Priscilla, with icy distrust, agrees to a truce, but sets the condition of constant surveillance of the elves. The elven queen accepts the terms with a wise smile, realizing that mutual caution will only strengthen their alliance. The warrior orders the army to return to rest, but her original plan remains unchanged. Rosalind secretly orders a soldier to spy on the elves, ready to report immediately at the slightest suspicion. The elf asks the queen in bewilderment why they should trade with people who do not trust them at all. The elf, with sad wisdom, replies that if people trusted easily, they would not be people. Deep down, the queen places desperate hope in Rain, seeing him as the only chance to change the elves' ruined future. The uneasy calm in the camp is interrupted by a scout returning with a report, desperately calling for the senior miss. The news that the border fortress is flying the flag of the Edgar family, not the Empire, leaves Rosalind in shock. A cold horror pierces the girl when she realizes that the beaten Duke of Castile had been telling the truth from the very beginning. Realizing the truth, Priscilla rushes to help Mr. Rain without hesitation, casting aside all doubts. The girl decisively orders the flag to be raised so that Rhine's troops know about the arrival of the Allies. The army rushes forward without stopping, ready at any cost to break through to Ealing before nightfall. Rain stands alone in the middle of a battlefield strewn with enemy bodies, a cold emptiness in his eyes. The young man is consumed with frustration and laments the loss of manpower that could have been used. Leah watches the gentleman with concern, mistaking the boy's gloomy expression for sorrow. The girl sincerely believes in the kindness of the young man, thinking that he is worried about the death of the invaders. The maid tries to console the young man, not realizing that the reason for Rain's sadness lies elsewhere. The sudden appearance of a messenger with news of the approaching cavalry of the Orvis Empire breaks the oppressive silence. The soldier's report about the second Miss's flag leaves Rain completely baffled, ruining all plans. Rain enthusiastically presents his vision to the Elven Queen, promising to turn Ealing into the Pearl of the continent. The young man declares that by investing in his plan, the elf will become not just a builder, but the founder of a legendary city. The queen is intrigued by the bold business plan, but there is deep doubt in her eyes. The elf objects that her people are accustomed to living in harmony with nature and do not need human benefits. The young man confidently rejects her arguments, accusing the queen of narrow-mindedness. With a sly smile, Rain states that demand is never born on its own, it is created. The elf calmly retorts that many human needs mean nothing in the eyes of her people. The queen gently warns Lord Rain that many human empires have fallen because of their own desires. The guy agrees, but immediately adds that it is desire that is the impetus that motivates the world to progress. Rhine gives a simple example of how the desire to fly in the skies led people to invent airplanes. Rain continues to convince, citing the invention of submarines as a result of the human desire to conquer the depths. The young man paints a picture of space exploration, proving that the desire to understand the universe drives progress. The young man with the burning eyes guarantees the queen unprecedented satisfaction from ruling the world from above. The elf coldly objects, recalling the 1,000-year history of her people, free from the slavery of desires. The guy with a gentle smile hints that as long as there is a desire, the elves have a chance for a different, better future. Rain's words cause the queen to remember a terrible vision of the future, and hope for salvation begins to arise in her. The elf acknowledges the young man's eloquence, but asks for time to think and advice from her people. Rain confidently agrees, making it clear that he is ready to wait for investments at any time. Suddenly, the hero calls Leah, interrupting the farewell and preparing the last decisive argument. The queen takes the document in her hands in bewilderment, not understanding what other surprise this guy has prepared. Rain presents the queen with an invitation to the ceremony, begging her to take the first step towards the industry of the future city. The messenger brings the astonishing news that Mr. Rain is in perfect health and has single-handedly cleared the battlefield. Priscilla can't believe how one man could stand against the Orvis Empire's 100,000-strong army. Realizing that the forbidden magic was true, the girl rushes to Mr. Rain without hesitation. The warrior abruptly stops her horse, her determination frozen in the air before the inevitable meeting. The guards part for the eldest miss, escorting her into the depths of the fortress, where they are already waiting for her. Rosalind bursts into the luxurious hall, freezing before the calm and powerful figure of Rain. The girl falls to her knees, begging for punishment for not arriving when she was needed. The young man, with cold calm, asks whether her older sister really sent her here. Rain asks a direct question as to why the warrior came from the enemy empire of Orvis. Rosalind reports in a reserved tone that the order to help Mr. Rain was received 3 days ago. The girl explains her tactical maneuver, deciding that the young man had retreated and ordering Ealing to be surrounded. Raina is amazed by the speed of the army's arrival, because without a railway, such a journey seems impossible. The young man quickly smooths over the awkwardness, attributing it all to fatigue and suggesting that the warrior take a rest. The heroine states with dignity that this is the Holker family's duty and apologizes for the trouble caused by her stupid uncle. A sudden revelation hits the guy when he realizes the girl's connection with the infamous Caesar. Rosalind, Caesar Holker's niece, humbly begs Mr. Rain to give her family a chance. The warrior desperately declares her readiness to accept any punishment without offering resistance. Left alone for the whole day, the girl realizes how difficult it is to earn this man's trust. Rosalind closes her eyes sadly, thinking about her family's foggy and frightening future. Rain's sudden appearance takes Rosalind by surprise, interrupting her painful thoughts. The young man with a disarming smile asks the girl not to be nervous, because he came with a business proposal. The warrior, having gathered her courage, desperately insists that Mr. Rain simply has to give her family a chance. The boy extends his hand, inviting Rosalind to become one of his people and change her destiny. The unexpected proposal shocks the heroine, making her heart beat faster. The young man explains that he was impressed by the girl's strategy on the battlefield. Rain mentally evaluates the warrior's high potential, seeing her as a valuable ally. The hero praises Rosalind's bravery and talent, noting her courage in attacking the enemy. Blushing with embarrassment but proud, the girl thanks him for the compliment, calling it her duty. Rain, with a confident smile, repeats his question whether Miss Rosalind wishes to become his faithful companion. Rosalind sheepishly agrees, willing to give everything to make up for the damage her family has done. Rain panics when he realizes that his words have been completely misunderstood and tries to stop the girl. The young man awkwardly tries to explain that he never thought about compensation, but the warrior falls to her knees again. The heroine declares with dignity that she will not object if he uses her body to atone for her uncle's sins. The young man desperately tries to fix everything, assuring her that he wants to see her only as his subordinate. Rosalind looks at Mr. Rain in complete confusion, not understanding what he is talking about. The guy officially declares that he will not prosecute her family for the crimes of Caesar Holker. Rain takes the plunge and asks the big question, asking Rosalind to become his knight. Tears well up in the girl's eyes at the thought that her dream of becoming a real knight could come true. For Rosalind, becoming Lord Rain's knight is the greatest honor, and she gladly accepts the offer. Rain writes a letter to Sister Priscilla, reporting the resolution of the crisis and praising Rosalind's outstanding talents. The young man instructs Leah to send a letter and an invitation to the ceremony to his second sister tomorrow. The young man looks at the system window, realizing that in order to complete the mission, he urgently needs to find new talent. The interface confirms that Rosalind Holker has become the first of 5 heroes to be cultivated. The maid suddenly reminds him of Duke Castile, whom the guy had completely forgotten about in the hustle and bustle of his business. The girl calmly reports that an important prisoner is currently in Ealing's dungeon. Rain descends into the dungeon to confront his fallen enemy. Even as a prisoner, Duke Castile scornfully declares that the pathetic boy is finished. The hero, with icy calm, asks what the Duke means by reminding him of his prisoner status. Castile is furious and shouts about the rule that forbids mages with forbidden magic from participating in human wars. The Duke is furious and accuses Rain of breaking the rules, predicting a hunt for the entire Edgar family. The young man pretends not to understand and innocently mentions Miss Selena. Castile dismissively waves this off, claiming that this is a real mage who used forbidden magic. The guy grins and dismisses it as a simple explosion of oil barrels, claiming he can repeat it countless times. The prisoner does not believe it, shouting that only forbidden magic is capable of such power. The young man wearily brushes off the argument, declaring that it is all in the past. Rain changes his tone, saying that he came to ask just one but very important question. The hero, with steel in his voice, demands an answer as to who is behind the Duke and what their true intentions are. Castile nervously denies having patrons, stating that Orvis's warriors do not need a reason to attack. The protagonist reveals his cards, telling about annual provocations on the border in order to capture cities and lands. Rhine notes the strangeness of the enemy attacks, because they never leave garrisons and always retreat in the fall. The young man directly states that behind these campaigns lies either the Emperor's madness or a secret goal. The Duke haughtily replies that the Empire is not interested in pathetic lands, and that all this is just a show of force. The young man doubtfully asks if this is really a show of force, or if they are testing something unknown. Castile stutters in panic, pretending that he has absolutely no idea what this guy's talking about. As he leaves, the hero realizes that behind this senseless drama there is a conspiracy that he must uncover. Feeling like he's being led by the nose, Rain decides to immediately develop the industry. 10 days later, Raina's sister Priscilla reads a letter in which her brother asks him to make Holker his subordinate. Priscilla coldly orders the maid to tell Velas that his brother is pleased with his daughter, and now the fool can calm down. The girl studies the invitation to the dam's completion ceremony with interest, trying to figure out her brother's new plan. The maid Gwen, with feigned modesty, admits that she is not given to comprehend the brilliant wisdom of young Master Rain. Priscilla, with a sly smile, decides to personally go to her brother's lands to see the mysterious dam with her own eyes. Gwen reluctantly agrees, hiding her own thoughts about her mistress's plans behind her submissiveness. The girl, with playful curiosity, instructs the maid to find several girls similar to Rosalind in order to understand her brother's taste. There is despondency in the imperial palace of Orvis, as news of the capture of the Grand Duke of Castile undermines the army's morale. One of the courtiers whispers in fear that if the Duke reveals their secret, even greater trouble awaits the empire. Emperor Orvis angrily interrupts the murmuring of the courtiers, not wanting to listen to the panic. The ruler angrily asks himself why he should continue to bear responsibility for the failures of others. The emperor, in a rage, demands from his advisors not an argument, but an immediate solution to the problem that has arisen. One of the advisors timidly suggests sending an envoy to Ealing for negotiations, seeing this as the only way out. The courtiers angrily reject the idea of negotiations, considering it humiliating for a great empire to bow to barbarian lands. Advisor Craven reminds us of the main threat, because if Castile speaks, all long-term plans will collapse. The man appeals to the wisdom of the ruler, begging him to make the right decision for the sake of the future of the empire. The emperor reluctantly agrees to consider peace negotiations, but doubts that there are any worthy candidates. The nobles thoughtfully list the qualities of an envoy, who must possess not only status but also courage. The emperor's strange words make Craven think, because he sees negotiations as only a way to demand compensation. The ruler, with a sly grin, notes that, judging by the expression on his face, the advisor has already thought about a suitable candidate. Trapped, Craven steps forward to recommend his unlikely candidate. The advisor suggests sending Miss Wilvina, Duke Richard's only daughter, to negotiate. The court explodes with indignation, because Vilvina's father was recently imprisoned for insulting his majesty. The emperor smiles inwardly, because the clever Craven always guesses the ruler's secret desires. The ruler asks Craven with feigned interest why he recommends the daughter of a state criminal. The advisor begins to outline his cunning plan, pointing to Wilvina's noble position as a demonstration of sincerity. The man continues, noting the young girl's eloquence and determination as a second reason for choosing her. Craven reveals his trump card, because the girl will desperately try to atone for her guilt and save her father. Convincing arguments force the rest of the courtiers to agree with the logic and foresight of the cunning advisor. The emperor, with an air of authority, hands over all responsibility for the execution of this risky plan to Craven's shoulders. The ruler gives orders to ensure the safety of Duke Richard's daughter, Miss Wilvina, on the upcoming trip. The advisor accepts the order with a bow, feeling the full weight of the mission entrusted to him. The emperor ominously hints that Craven should know what to do with Wilvina and Castiel on the way back. A mercenary in the shadows assures the emperor that the targets are doomed to die in the despised territory of Caledoriel. The ruler is gleefully anticipating war, because the murder of the envoy will be the perfect pretext for an invasion. Life in the city is in full swing. Merchants are calling out to customers, creating an atmosphere of peaceful prosperity. Rain and Aisha are walking through the market, and the guy smiles, hiding the true purpose of his visit. Grateful residents enthusiastically tell how the young gentleman changed their lives for the better. The hero jokes with feigned severity, maintaining the image of an accessible and friendly ruler. A young man and his companion are relaxing in a cafe, enjoying a moment of peace among their people. A young man secretly scans passers-by, looking for hidden talents with high potential. The guy sighs in disappointment, because finding real nuggets among ordinary people turned out to be incredibly difficult. Rain is determined to continue his search, planning to explore every corner of Esling in the next few days. Rain is devastated to realize that all his searches have been in vain, and he has not found a single suitable talent. The system reminds him of the task of finding 5 heroes, and the boy, in desperation, thinks of asking his brother and sister for help. The young man discards this thought, deciding to rely only on himself, since his family had already helped by sending Rosalind. Aisha tenderly comforts the tired young man, offering him some rest after 3 days of fruitless searching. The girl says that she took the initiative and posted leaflets, calling on everyone who considers themselves talented to come to him. The hero realizes with disappointment that the people who came, although talented, are only fit for the role of factory workers. Rain cries in comical despair because his factory cannot open and the dam is still not finished. The young man feels like a god among his adoring students. Although forcing magicians to study chemistry seems like a crime to him, the guy complains about the incredibly difficult task that this stupid system has thrown at him. A stranger suddenly appears and smiles, assuring that this time there will definitely be no problems. Rain looks in amazement at the incredible stats of Armando Cross, an alchemist and master of medicine. The hero's face shines with delight, because he has finally found that very missing talent. Armando enthusiastically offers his new potion, fervently promising that this time it will definitely work. A young alchemist tries to convince a merchant of the power of his invention, but the merchant angrily calls the young man a liar. The angry merchant shouts that because of the guy's previous invention, he lost an entire box of apples. Armando awkwardly justifies that his repellent simply wasn't suitable for such delicate fruits. The verbal altercation escalates into a brawl, and the merchant begins to shake the hapless inventor. Rain watches the scene in amazement, not believing that such a genius could find himself in such a situation. Aisha looks at what is happening with doubt, not understanding how this dubious alchemist attracted the attention of the master. The girl is full of determination and will not allow some deceiver to fool her dear young master Rain. Armando sits on the ground in despair, hungry and depressed after another failed attempt to sell his potions. Rain confidently approaches the alchemist, expressing a keen interest in his dubious concoctions. Armando's face instantly lights up with hope, because he sees in the rich stranger his chance to hit the jackpot. The alchemist begins to ingratiatingly praise Rain, recognizing him as a true connoisseur at first glance. The young man proudly shows off his potions, assuring that he has a remedy for any occasion. Rain curiously asks who he is, since he has never met this guy in Esling before. The guy introduces himself to Armando, explaining that he is a hermit alchemist and rarely comes into town. Armando readily offers his services, promising to create any potion that Rain's friend might need. Aisha whispers worriedly into the master's ear, warning him against lying alchemists. Rain replies with a sly grin that it remains to be seen who will actually deceive whom. Aisha is perplexed while Rain bluntly asks about the price of the dubious batch of potions. Armando begins his show by praising a potion that can make objects glow at night. The alchemist continues his presentation, promising superhuman speed to anyone who drinks the green potion. The guy with a sly grin hints at a special potion that can give pleasure all night long. Rain rejects the low-quality product with open disappointment, demanding to see something better. An offended Armando seethes with pride, declaring that he will not hold back now. Aisha glares at the impudent man, silently threatening him for his insolence towards the young master. The inventor is frightened by the formidable appearance of the maid, warily pointing her out to his potential buyer. Rain coolly exposes the potion's composition, offering a cheaper, non-toxic, and effective analog. Armando stands in complete shock, unable to believe that this stranger was able to reveal his secret recipe. Armando furiously defends the secrecy of his recipe, but Rain merely dismisses his claims with a mocking wave of his hand. The hero coldly calls the alchemist's knowledge basic chemistry, completely devaluing his so-called art. The inventor, in shock, accuses the stranger of stealing his personal notes, not believing in such deep knowledge. Rain sneers, asking what the point is in reading the writings of a penniless alchemist who can't sell his wares. The young man imperiously offers Armando his only chance, demanding an oath of allegiance in exchange for the path to true alchemy. The alchemist is stunned by this proposal and suspiciously tries to understand who is standing in front of him. Rain finally reveals his identity, introducing himself as the new ruler of Essling and the son of the Grand Duke. Armando, with a sly gleam in his eyes, realizes that instead of a small jackpot, he has a really big fish on his hands. The boy proudly declares that he would rather die of hunger than become a servant of the nobility. Rain notes with cold disappointment that his high status has not made the desired impression on the alchemist. Armando, with caustic resignation, admits that he is nothing more than a dog, unworthy of the great master's wrath. Aisha is furious and demands an immediate apology, and her gaze does not bode well for the disobedient. The alchemist greets the threat with mockery, provoking the girl to even greater rage with his impudent behavior. Rain stops her angry maid in an authoritative tone, taking control of the situation. The hero tries to reach out to Armando, acknowledging his past grievances, but emphasizing his personal interest. The young man resolutely declares that he is ready to give the stubborn inventor a unique chance. Rain offers the guy untold knowledge and the opportunity to change the world with the help of real science. The young man points to the squalid slums, painting a bleak alternative to languishing in poverty. Rain adds with a smug smile that he wouldn't mind if Armando chose that path. The alchemist angrily rejects the offer, accusing all the nobility of self-interest and declaring that he will never have anything to do with them. Rain watches with dismay as Armando's loyalty declines, realizing that he has not only failed the recruitment, but also made an enemy. The alchemist scornfully declares that he will never believe a single word of the lying nobility. Suddenly, a joyful child's cry is heard, and a little girl named Alina runs straight towards them. Armando rushes to his sister in panic, not understanding what she is doing in such a dangerous place. The guide desperately tries to hide Alina, begging her to hide from the evil master. The inventor looks at Rain with hatred, warning his sister that this man will only bring her harm. To Armando's complete amazement, the girl happily hugs Rain, calling him her little brother. The young ruler turns to the child with surprise and tenderness, trying to understand where she knows him from. Alina enthusiastically tells that her mother thanks her brother Rain for their happy life. The girl proudly adds that the whole family persuaded her father to work hard on the construction of the dam for the good gentleman. Armando, in a rage, accuses Reina of exploiting the people, pointing to his sister as a victim of his tyranny. The hero, with icy calm, asks what such hasty and erroneous conclusions are based on. The alchemist points to Yelena's cast-offs, claiming that they are direct evidence of oppression and the unchanging nature of the nobility. Aisha angrily stands up for her master, not daring to tolerate such impudent slander against the most caring ruler. Alina looks at her brother reproachfully, not understanding what nonsense he is talking about the good Mr. Rain. The girl passionately defends her benefactor, telling how he provided everyone with work, food, and shelter. Armando tries to silence his sister, claiming that she doesn't understand anything about what's going on. Rain calmly explains that the poor clothing of the inhabitants is a temporary phenomenon due to the underdeveloped light industry. The young ruler promises with a warm smile that soon all the people of Essling will be able to wear beautiful clothes. The boy remains adamant, not believing in the master's care and continuing to accuse the nobility of corruption and greed. Alina reproaches her brother with childish resentment, not understanding how he can say such things about the good Mr. Rain. Armando angrily leaves, warning his sister of the danger and not wanting to see the hypocritical game of the nobility. Rain watches the departing alchemist with a firm determination, not allowing this stubborn man to simply leave. The hero understands that such a rare talent cannot be lost and is going to follow the inventor. A sudden sharp pain pierces the young man, causing him to grimace painfully right in the middle of the street. To the horror of Aisha and Alina, the young ruler falls to the ground unconscious, unable to resist the sudden illness. Under the worried gaze of his faithful servant, the hero slowly opens his eyes, already in his bed. Aisha is extremely relieved to see that her young master has finally come to his senses after a long swoon. Rain tries to reassure the girl with a weak smile, assuring her that he is completely fine. The maid reproachfully objects, because his body could not withstand the fatigue from constant work and the search for talents. Rain gently takes Aisha's hand, apologizing for causing trouble and promising to be more careful in the future. Having come to his senses, the first thing the young man asks is where that stubborn alchemist Armando has disappeared to. The girl tells how she immediately brought the gentleman to the estate as soon as he lost consciousness. Aisha carefully wipes the ruler's forehead, finally beginning the story about that very alchemist. The maid recalls with surprise how the boy returned after seeing Rain fall despite his hostility. She reports that the inventor left behind a cure for the illness and immediately left without waiting for gratitude. The hero, with a thoughtful look, suggests that it was Armando's medicine that so quickly alleviated his fever. Aisha proudly denies this, stating that she would never give the master a dubious medicine from a commoner. The girl lies that the alchemist's potion remained on the table and that the town doctor cured the young man. Rain stands up determinedly to take a personal look at the cure, causing her loyal servant to panic. Rain studies the medicine, admitting that it looks quite professional in color and texture. The young man decides to give the potion to the doctor for testing in order to confirm his suspicions about the alchemist's talent. Aisha asks doubtfully if the master really wants to hire such a hostile and ill-mannered person. The hero firmly confirms his intention, calling Armando not just a talent, but a real rare genius. The young ruler ponders, realizing that to succeed, he must first find out the reason for the boy's deep prejudice. At this time, the inventor returns alone to his modest workshop, immersed in his thoughts. The boy picks up a photograph of himself smiling happily next to his late teacher. Armando mentally addresses his mentor, telling about his meeting with a strange and insightful nobleman. The alchemist admits that this man is not only smart, but was also able to charm even little Alina. Looking at the old diary, the young man swears to the teacher that he will never allow this nobleman to deceive him. Armando furiously vows to complete the teacher's research and avenge this terrible loss. Clenching his fist, the guy promises to make the greedy nobles pay for absolutely everything they did. The story takes us back 15 years to Liesl Grant, Essling's most accomplished alchemist. She was not just a genius, but an idealist who firmly believed that alchemy should serve the people, not the authorities. One day, Liesl found a homeless boy, Armando, on the street, which became a real salvation for the child. The woman not only raised the orphan, but also lovingly passed on to the boy her extensive knowledge of alchemy. Their relationship was warmer than that of a teacher and a student, because Armando saw Liesl as a real mother. The mentor taught the young man not only to create potions, but also to find a balance between humanity and morality. But Liesl's research caused discontent among the nobility, and one day the nobles and their guards burst right into the house. They stole the results of the work and brutally killed the woman, blaming it on an accident due to forbidden alchemy. On that tragic day, 15-year-old Armando was left all alone at the grave of his only loved one. In the pouring rain, the young man, choking with tears, vowed to collect all the notes and finish Liesl's life's work. Nun Ioria sadly tells us that the boy still bears the heavy burden of the past and lonely responsibility. Rain pragmatically notes that the touching story does not solve his main problem with hiring a genius alchemist. The young ruler, with cold calculation in his eyes, directly asks the nun if she knows where Armando is now. Ioria angrily reproaches the master for his heartlessness, but the young man stands firm because sympathy will not help the matter. The hero gives a speech about the need to move forward, because life requires you to do your job no matter what. The girl assumes that the inventor most likely went to Liesl's old house, where he spends most of his time. Rain and Aisha, full of determination, are going to set off immediately so as not to waste precious time. Already at the exit, the ruler stops, asking the key question about what exactly the deceased mentor studied. Ioria thoughtfully tries to remember what the name of that very study of the late Liesl was. The nun's hesitant mention of something about steam leaves Rain in complete shock. The hero, in extreme excitement, demands that the girl immediately repeat the word she just said. The young man grabs Ayoria, begging her to repeat, but she is at a loss and cannot remember any details. The thought flashes through the ruler's mind that if the guess is correct, then they will be able to change the whole world. The nun babbles that she heard it, as if it was just some kind of toy or something like that. Rain, without wasting a second, drags the girl along with him, ordering her to take him there immediately. A guess flashes in the hero's mind. This must be a steam engine, which means Liesel still has the blueprints. For the man from the past life, the steam engine was an ancient thing, known only in theory and facts. As a mechanical engineer, the young man has an innate understanding of detail, which gives him an incredible advantage. Ryan had always dreamed of recreating a steam engine, but he desperately lacked the actual drawings and the basic idea. A spark of hope lights up in the young man's eyes, because with Liesel's notes, he will be able to solve the mystery and restore the engine. The hero anticipates how from this moment a new era of industry will begin, which will change absolutely everything. Arriving at the place, the ruler calls the alchemist, catching him by surprise right next to the unfinished mechanism. Armando, in a panic, decides that he must under no circumstances show the legacy left by his mistress. The inventor greets the uninvited guests with hostility, rudely declaring that they are not welcome here at all. Rain walks past resolutely, asking point blank where the notes the teacher left are. The guy grabs the gentleman by the shoulder, advising him to abandon this idea before it is too late. The young man furiously shouts that he will never give up the teacher's notes, but Ayoria tries to calm him down. The nun gently explains that young Master Rain only wants to see if the records contain anything that will help the city. Armando, in desperation, puts a knife to Rain's throat, demanding that he leave immediately. The guy shouts with hatred that this is no place for such vile nobles as the uninvited guest. Aisha watches the scene with alarm, ready to protect her master from this crazy idiot. The hero confidently stops his assistant, making it clear that he will deal with this situation himself. The young ruler slowly approaches the inventor, pityingly calling the alchemist a real fool. The young man explains that Armando does not even realize the true significance of the steam engine for the entire world. Ryan accuses the guy of not fulfilling Liesel's will, but on the contrary, ruining the great discovery. The inventor explodes with anger, not understanding who this man thinks he is to lecture him. The ruler, with a sly smile, offers to make a bet to resolve the dispute once and for all. The alchemist freezes in bewilderment, clutching the knife in his hand and asking suspiciously what bet they are talking about. Rain sets a condition: if he makes Liesel's device work, then Armando will obediently work for him. In case of failure, the young man promises to immediately leave Ealing and never return here again. The inventor bursts into laughter, considering the noble gentleman's proposal to be the funniest joke in his life. The guy asks with a grin how a nobleman who doesn't know the potion dares to say such a thing. The ruler, with a slight smile, takes the answer as consent to the terms of the deal he proposed. The alchemist accepts the deal, but with a cheeky grin declares that it will not be enough. Armando demands that if he loses, Rain kneels before his teacher's grave and asks for forgiveness. Ayoria, horrified, tries to stop the boy, claiming that the young master has no evil intent. The young man, with his arms crossed over his chest, looks defiantly at the ruler, waiting for his answer. The hero accepts all the conditions without hesitation, promising to personally apologize to Liesel in case of his loss. Rain, with undisguised interest, asks permission to look at the steam engine that Liesel left behind. The ruler is gleefully anticipating how he will mercilessly exploit Armando after fixing this mechanism. The inventor proudly presents Professor Liesel's legacy, begging them to be careful and not to break the device. Aisha and Ayoria look at the strange thing with bewilderment, not understanding the purpose of this device. The hero approaches the machine with bated breath, recognizing it as a real steam engine. The young man cannot contain his delight, repeating in shock how brilliant this invention is. The young man touches the cold metal with trepidation, admiringly recognizing his late mentor as a true genius. The assistant asks in surprise if the things Liesel has invented are really that amazing. The gentleman explains with passion that in any world, a person who created a steam engine must be considered a genius. The alchemist proudly declares that the professor was a great person, unlike others with undeserved reputations. Rain is surprised to realize that Armando lived here only to keep this mechanism alive. The boy sadly admits that Professor Liesel never told him how to make the device work. The hero decides to disassemble the machine, but the inventor screams in horror, not believing what he heard. The alchemist, in a panic, warns that if everything is not put back together, the professor's discovery will be destroyed. The young man declares with absolute certainty that there is no mechanism in the world that he is not able to repair. The ruler asks to bring a screwdriver, but the young man, perplexed, asks what it is. The gentleman covers his face with his hand in despair, not understanding how one could not know about such a simple tool. Armando sheepishly explains that he used magic, surprised by his interlocutor's ignorance of the simplest things. The inventor scornfully says that the spoiled youth is incapable of understanding the enormous amount of work that went into the device. Rain sighs in resignation, realizing that he will have to do without such a necessary tool as a screwdriver. Rain asks Aisha for a knife, demonstrating resourcefulness in a desperate situation with no tools. The young man deftly uses the blade to carefully pry open the outer panel of the steam engine. After removing the lid, the ruler admires the beautiful work, once again recognizing Liesel as a true genius. Suddenly, the hero's face distorts with shock, because the most important parts are missing inside the mechanism. The gentleman turns angrily to the alchemist, demanding an immediate answer as to where the internal parts have disappeared to. Armando stands frozen in amazement, unable to understand how a stranger could know about the missing components. The guy tries to hide the truth by suggesting that Rain admit defeat and go to bow to the professor's grave. The young man does not fall for the trick, pointing out exactly where the main control part should be. The ruler's patience runs out and he furiously demands to know where the part went, forcing the inventor to shut up. The alchemist, with pain in his voice, admits that the insides of the machine were taken by some unknown nobleman. Rain asks in bewilderment why some nobleman would need an ordinary set of gears. Armando bitterly recounts how a nobleman forcibly took rare parts to create a statue of himself. The hero becomes enraged, not believing that someone could destroy the main parts to prove their own stupidity. The ruler, seething with anger, demands that the name of this bastard nobleman be immediately revealed. The inventor tries to stop the young man, warning him that he is too big a boss to be insulted. The young man sneers with icy contempt, doubting the existence of those he dare not insult. The gentleman resolutely declares that he wants to see the one who dared to hinder progress and its industrialization. The guy, with fear in his voice, finally says the name of the culprit, who turns out to be a certain Duke Oscar. Ayoria shudders in horror upon hearing the name, clearly recognizing a very influential and dangerous man. Rain immediately turns to the nun, wondering where this mysterious Duke comes from. Ayoria begins the story by mentioning that Duke Oscar was once only a minor nobleman in Essling. The girl describes how his amazing achievements in alchemy and victory in the imperial competition attracted the attention of the emperor. For his talents, Oscar was generously rewarded not only with resources, but also with lands along with the high title of Duke. Rain, looking tense, immediately asks where exactly the lands granted to him are located. The nun replies with alarm in her voice that his possessions are located in Gransel, the upper right part of Essling. Aisha and the hero realize with horror that the Granzel region belongs to Grand Duke Teleros Elroy, not the Edgar family. The young man recalls his father speaking of the strained relationship and disagreements with Grand Duke Elroy. The assistant confirms that the father and Elroy's political views differed greatly, leading to frequent clashes on the council. The ruler brushes aside old problems, focusing entirely on the current, more pressing task. The gentleman, with icy fury in his gaze, pronounces the name of the culprit, promising to remember Duke Oscar forever. Rain, in a rage, grabs Armando, vowing to make the culprit pay 100-fold for the shattered gears. Ayoria rushes to the young master in panic, begging him not to conflict with Duke Oscar because of the mortal danger. The ruler coldly waves his hand, stating that it is Oscar who should be afraid, since he dared to destroy a priceless thing. The alchemist looks at the hero with distrust, unable to believe his determination to stand up to the powerful Duke. The young man confidently reassures Armando, promising not only to get the steam engine working again. The gentleman with the flaming gaze swears that he will show Duke Oscar the true value of this great invention. The young man hopefully asks the nun if there are any drawings of the destroyed parts left in Liesel's notes. The guy regretfully reports that the professor did not leave such an important drawing in her alchemical notes. Suddenly, the inventor remembers that Liesel was supposed to discuss the production of these parts with the dwarf blacksmith. Rain immediately realizes that this is their only chance, because the dwarf blacksmith should know everything about the missing parts. Armando admits with annoyance that the dwarf blacksmith did not want to see him, despite numerous attempts. Rain confidently places his hand on the alchemist's shoulder, deciding to take the negotiations into his own hands. The young man grins and says he'll try it himself, ignoring the warning about the guy's strange nature. Before they can enter, the heroes hear a rude order to get out, because the owner has no time for the villains to entertain themselves. Ayoria tries to intercede, assuring Uncle Bram that the young master has done much for the people of Esling. The blacksmith snorts with contempt, making it clear that he is well aware of all the deeds of this scoundrel nobleman. The master cynically downplays his merits, asking if his entire glory lies in killing a couple of corrupt officials. The nun enthusiastically praises the ruler, calling him unusually good and loving his people. Bram angrily cuts the girl off, stating that this is merely the duty of a ruler and not a reason for praise. The gentleman agrees with a smile, confirming that it was precisely to fulfill his duty that he came here today. Bram is amazed by the young man's wisdom, not understanding how such a boy can say such mature things. The blacksmith shrewdly guesses that since they have come, it means they definitely need some important service. Rain directly asks for Liesel's drawing of the gear for the steam engine, hoping to create a new part. The master explodes in rage, ordering them to leave immediately and refusing to give up the damn thing. The gentleman looks calmly at the dwarf, trying to understand the reason for such a sudden and furious refusal. Bram painfully admits that it was these gears that killed Liesel, causing her death at the hands of the noble bastards. The blacksmith cries out in despair that he will never make this damn thing for anyone again. Armando angrily accuses the old man of hypocrisy, recalling his own words about the blacksmith's duty to people. The master rudely shuts the guy up, shouting that there will be no fights or arguments, and this is his final decision. The dwarf adds bitterly that even with the presence of dragon crystal ore, the mechanism still will not work. Rain suddenly realizes that the key to the machine's operation lies in the dragon crystal ore, not the design. Bram, in anger, takes the young man's words as an insult, thinking that he doubts his skill. The gentleman throws down a challenge with a cheeky grin, hinting that the blacksmith's abilities cannot be relied upon in this matter. The master clenches his fist, furious at the brazen attack of the stupid boy, which has hurt his pride. The blacksmith explodes into a scream, demanding that he stop talking this nonsense and shut up immediately. The dwarf reveals the main secret, explaining that only the ancient race of dragons is capable of smelting iron ore. The young man confirms his guess with icy calm, because the dragon's shadow behind him says a lot. The ruler points to the furnace, bluntly stating that its temperature is not sufficient to smelt the required ore. Bram bitterly admits that there is no oven on the entire continent capable of handling the task. Rain, with a confident smirk, challenges him to create what everyone thinks is impossible and asks if the master will believe him. Bram smiles in disbelief, because the construction of such a furnace would revolutionize the entire level of forging in the Empire. The blacksmith looks at the young man with disdain, not understanding how a boy from a family of lords dares to speak such loud words. With a predatory smile, Rain offers a deal, promising to forge Liesel's gears if he builds the necessary furnace. The master, succumbing to excitement, agrees to the bet, not suspecting that the guy finally forced him to agree. The gentleman confirms with satisfaction that the deal is done, and now there is no turning back for either of them. The dwarf, leaving, throws a harsh condition over his shoulder in case the young man fails. Bram, with an adamant look, declares that if the guy loses, he will have to get out of here immediately. The ruler, with the precision of an engineer, determines that the temperature in this furnace is far from the melting point of iron ore. The young man immediately finds a weak spot, realizing that the design lacks a secondary oxygen supply system. Rain, hammer in hand, is ready to back up his words with action, radiating an aura of confidence and hidden power. Rain, without hesitation, delivers a crushing blow with his hammer to the stonework of the furnace, shocking everyone. Ayoria and Armando scream in horror, unable to believe what the young master has just done. The alchemist, in a panic, attacks the hero, accusing him of destroying the last hope of creating the parts. The ruler, with an unperturbed smile, reassures his friends that his actions were part of a brilliant plan. The young man explains that the holes made are not destruction, but channels for the supply of secondary oxygen. The young man shows the diagram with a gleam in his eyes, proving that the temperature can now reach the required level. The nun looks at the stove doubtfully, not believing that such simple changes could really work. The gentleman calls not to underestimate the power of science. His confidence is infectious and gives a faint hope. The returning Bram hands over the iron ore with distrust, still considering the boy's idea to be empty boasting. The blacksmith, seeing holes in his furnace, explodes with rage, accusing the scoundrel of treacherously destroying his creation. Bram shouts in rage that today he will kill the impudent man who dared to ruin the work of his life. Rain looks calmly at the enraged dwarf, giving a 100% guarantee that this furnace will melt the ore. The master scornfully ridicules the boy, not believing that he could know more about smelting than the old blacksmith. The blacksmith explodes with indignation, because even a child knows that holes in the furnace will only lower the temperature. The gentleman, with an unperturbed look, suggests simply loading the fuel and seeing how everything works. The dwarf agrees with grim determination, promising to beat the boy up if this turns out to be another trick. All three, holding their breath, peer into the blazing mouth of the furnace with fear and hope. Bram's eyes widen in shock as he sees molten metal pouring out of the furnace. Armando and Ayoria babble in amazement, unable to believe that the iron ore has actually melted. The master looks at his oven in complete confusion, not understanding what the hell made it work. Rain, with a triumphant grin, asks what it is like, Mr. Bram, to see the impossible with your own eyes. Bram is completely stunned, his world turned upside down by the miracle he has seen. The blacksmith shakes the boy in despair, demanding to reveal the secret of how the furnace was able to melt iron. The young man calmly explains that it is all about the principles of pneumatics, offering to devote time to a lecture. The gentleman reminds him of the deal, and Bram reluctantly admits his defeat, because the boy actually won. The master, with renewed determination, declares that since the furnace is working, he will forge these gears for him again. The blacksmith's gaze becomes hard. He honestly warns of trouble if that nobleman appears again. Rain promises with icy confidence that if the nobleman does not come, he himself will go looking for him. A young man holds in his hands with delight the main part of a steam engine, the key to a new era. The ruler laughs madly, proclaiming the advent of the industrial era, his eyes burning with the fire of ambition. The maid looks at the gear with concern, doubting that it will withstand the crushing power of the steam engine. The girl is full of fear, because any breakdown of the mechanism can lead to terrible consequences for the young gentleman. Ayoria suggests finding dragon ore through her clan, seeing this as the only truly safe solution. Rain explains with slight superiority that Liesel only used dragon ore due to her lack of understanding of industrialization. Armando seethes with righteous anger, demanding that they not dare insult the blessed memory of his great teacher. The ruler reminds the alchemist of the deal he made, according to which he must become his loyal subordinate. The guy sets the gears with perfect precision, and the complex mechanism clicks into place. The gentleman announces with anticipation that right now everyone will witness the birth of a real miracle. The young man pulls the lever decisively, starting the complex mechanism with one movement and breathing life into it. Outside, the huge steam engine roars to life with a deafening roar, marking the beginning of a new industrial revolution. Ayoria screams in delight, because young Master Rain's incredible contraption actually worked. Armando looks at the running engine, and a painful image of his beloved teacher appears in the boy's memory. A bright memory takes the alchemist back to the day when Liesel called out to her boy with a shining smile. The little student persistently mastered the complex science under the sensitive guidance of his dear mentor. The teacher, with feigned severity, slapped the fool on the back of the head for yet another mistake in assembling the mechanism. Liesel looked at their joint creation with hope, dreaming that it would one day bring great happiness to people. The last moment of the mentor's life flashes before her eyes, her blood and her last words, bequeathing the car to him. Armando falls to his knees, crushed by the unbearable weight of his great teacher's last wish. Tears stream down the student's face, because his mentor's agonizing dream has finally come true. Rain sympathetically asks to give the guy a little time to live through this pain and joy alone. Armando finally gives in to his tears, releasing all the pain and sorrow he has been suppressing for years. 3 hours later, Bram admits with surprise that he didn't expect the boy to fix this complex contraption. The blacksmith snorts with disdain, because to him it is just a steam engine, a useless pile of metal. Ayoria asks young Master Rain in confusion what this thing can do other than let off steam. The master mockingly suggests that the broken contraption will simply stand here and frighten people with its appearance. Rain confidently states that the steam engine is not just a smoking contraption, as everyone thinks. The hero with glowing eyes proclaims that before them stands the foundation of the future industrial society. The gnome and the nun look at each other in complete bewilderment, not understanding the meaning of these strange and frightening words. The young man explains that this machine is capable of supplying energy to others by making their gears turn. Before their eyes appears a vision of the future, where factories and textile machines work non-stop. The vision of the future expands, showing transport and even terrifying military machines born from new technology. For all these incredible inventions, The steam engine would become the indispensable and beating heart of progress. Rhine pompously declares that the greatest invention of mankind is the simple and ingenious boiling of water. Ioria looks with childish delight at her stunning young master, Rain, standing on the pedestal. Bram still doubts whether this miracle is really as wonderful as this self-confident guy describes it. The ruler, with a mysterious smile, promises that they will soon understand the true and frightening meaning of his great words. The hero vows to lead them step by step into the world of industrialization, showing them all its crushing power. Suddenly, Lady Priscilla appears, whose arrival in these lands is shrouded in mystery and foreshadows great changes. Rain greets her long-awaited second sister with joyful anticipation. The young man rubs his hands in anticipation, because the dam is almost finished, and he will be able to beg his sister for some money. The knight reports that Lady Priscilla has prepared a gift and demands that she return immediately. Rain is delighted, because if the gift is gold, then she won't have to ask for money. The girl reports with horror that the gift is a group of adult girls. The first sister greets Rain with a joyful cry and open arms. The girl hugs the young man tightly, confessing how much she missed him. The guy responds to the hug, but his gaze shows seriousness before an important question. The young man angrily points at the strangers, demanding an explanation from his sister. The sister, with a flirtatious smile, asks if there really isn't one among them that her brother would like. The hero exclaims in despair that this is not the case at all and leaves. The young man indignantly complains that because of these girls they now look at him strangely. The sister, with a sly smile, wonders if these people dare to show disrespect to the ruler himself. Rain panics when she realizes that the maid Leia now definitely thinks her master is a real pervert. The boy complains to his sister about the murderous expression on Leia's face, who is usually so gentle with him. The girl notes with a smile that since Alice has an opinion, it means the young man is very dear to her. The hero screams in horror that his sister's train of thought really worries him. The young man demands that she stop joking and immediately explain why she brought so many people here. The sister, seeing her brother's nervousness, agrees to tell the truth, because it's all because of his letter. Rain is completely perplexed. He has no memory of sending any letter. The girl explains that in the letter he had his eye on Rosalind, and she was simply taking care of her brother's happiness. The young man, in shock, shouts that this is a misunderstanding, because he never said that he had his eye on Rosalind. The sister laughingly admits her mistake, but immediately suggests choosing Rosalind, since she was the subject of the conversation. Priscilla continues to tease her brother by asking Alice if she would mind if he married someone else. Leah, with a stony face, replies that Miss Priscilla is joking, and that she, as a servant, has no right to comment on it. The maid firmly states that choosing a future wife is a decision that only young Master Rain can make. The guy, embarrassed, asks Leia not to pay attention to this nonsense that his unbearable sister is talking. The girl finally stops joking and orders Gwen to take the arriving girls downstairs so they can rest. Rhine reports that the Alinga Dam will soon be completed, which will not only be able to irrigate fields, but also become a hydroelectric project. The sister, confused, asks what the dam and energy production are, assuming that it is some kind of magic. The young man explains that the energy of the water will be used to run mechanical devices, providing energy. Priscilla is amazed to realize that her brother is talking about the possibility of solving the pressing problem of food. Rain explains that this is neither magic nor mechanics, but a completely different technical system unknown to them. Priscilla suspiciously asks how he could have known about such a complex system. The girl reproachfully reminds him that he always preferred to learn how to wield a sword rather than sit at books. The sister, with a chilling look, demands an answer to who he is and what happened to her real brother. The guy panics and realizes that he has completely forgotten about his past reputation and is now backed into a corner. A flashback shows that he was seriously injured, and this can be used as an excuse. The young man desperately searches for a way to get out of this dangerous situation before his sister suspects something is wrong. The hero calmly explains that after falling ill a month and a half ago, he discovered the world of books. Priscilla recalls a letter from Alice in which she wrote that Rain began to read madly after his recovery. The girl regretfully wonders why she didn't pay attention to what kind of book he was reading then. Rain excitedly shows his sister the book, claiming that it was the source of all his knowledge. Priscilla looks suspiciously at the strange entries in the book, while the boy smiles nervously to the side. The girl proudly declares that he is worthy of being her brother, since he was able to translate the knowledge from books into reality. The young man smiles with relief, because now he has the perfect excuse for why he didn't practice his fighting skills. The sister sympathetically says that she knows how much he suffered and understands his forced inaction. Priscilla touches her brother tenderly, assuring him that she understands his refusal to train for the sake of his life. The girl hugs Rain, admitting that she was simply afraid for him and will never suspect him again. The hero reassures his sister that he is fine and is even capable of great things. Priscilla promises that no matter what, she will always be on her beloved brother's side. The sister, with a warm smile, offers her full support in all endeavors on his territory. Rain, with a sly smile, decides to take up his sister's offer because he just happens to have a place that needs help. Priscilla asks skeptically what kind of help her enterprising brother needed so urgently. The young man hopefully asks his sister to invest in his important plan, on which the future of all of Esling depends. The girl doubtfully reminds him that he has already shaken down a lot of resources from the nobles, and that should be enough. The guy explains with a laugh that this time the problem is not money, but an acute shortage of people. Memories show that Esling suffered enormous losses in men over many years of wars and disasters. There is a particularly acute shortage of people who are able to work with and understand new, complex technologies. The sister realizes with a serious expression that what her brother really wants to ask her for is people. The hero, with a triumphant look, confirms his sister's guess because this is precisely what he asked for. The young man asks for experienced blacksmiths and farmers, promising them a good life and training in new technologies. Priscilla doubtfully states that the plan is not bad, but she's not going to let people go so easily. Rain reproaches her sister for her unwillingness to keep her word, reminding her that Esling's development is also beneficial to her, to which she laughingly agrees. The girl, with a sly grin, agrees to transport the people, but immediately puts forward her insidious condition. The cold-eyed sister demands to see the results first to convince her of the wisdom of this risky venture. The young man accepts the challenge with confidence, promising his sister to demonstrate the full power of the real industry. Priscilla is relieved to admit to Gwen that her fears were unfounded and that Rain is still the same brother and not the Emperor's puppet. Gwen agrees, noting that the intelligent and diligent young Mr. Rain will definitely develop Esling for the better. The girl clutches the cup, coldly declaring that she will never forgive the Emperor for poisoning her brother. Since the Emperor deprived Rain of the opportunity to practice martial arts, it would be fair to make him lose his son. Sister orders Gwen to learn everything about the princes and choose the easiest and most vulnerable target among them to strike. Priscilla, with cold determination, declares that she will make the Emperor pay for all his sins. Gwen kneels, assuring her mistress that everything will be done cleanly, efficiently, and without unnecessary fuss. The girl thinks with rage that the dog Emperor touched the most precious person to her, and now revenge is inevitable. In the forest, one of the bandits happily informs the boss that they have captured valuable goods that will bring a huge amount of money. The other two mercenaries are outraged that most of the money is going to old Elderic while they are risking their lives. The boss angrily orders them to shut up, reminding them that the greedy Elderic still provides them with reliable cover. The leader asks with disdain if they really thought they could walk around Esling without a protector. The man, with cold indifference, suggests that the dissatisfied should simply get lost if they do not want to continue this business. Suddenly, a writer brings bad news, announcing that Esling has a new ruler, which leaves the boss in shock. The leader, in a panic, furiously demands to be told immediately what exactly is happening in these lands. The messenger reports in panic that the entire guard at the gates of Esling has been replaced by completely unfamiliar faces. The attempt to bribe the new guards failed, causing only a flurry of uncomfortable questions and suspicions. The boy had to lie about visiting his relatives, and only in this way did he learn that Elderic was no longer the ruler. One of the mercenaries timidly suggests that the boss return before the situation becomes completely hopeless. The leader shouts in rage that there is no way back for them. They are driven into a corner by their own obligations. The boss reminds them of the deal with Duke Escar for 3,000 gold pieces, which they cannot break. One of the bandits expresses a reasonable fear that the new ruler may not release them with the kidnapped women. The leader confidently declares that any ruler is greedy for money, and there is no need to panic about this. The leader decides to pretend to be a caravan of traders in order to capture even more women and test the limits of his luck. One of the thugs, with a nasty grin, asks if they will be able to have fun with the captives tonight. The bandits take a nasty joy in asking their boss for permission to have some fun with the captives before their possible death. The leader, with cold indifference, allows everyone to be used except the mysterious red-haired girl. The mercenaries enthusiastically thank their leader and rush to the cart, anticipating some brutal entertainment. The two thugs exchange disgusted, anticipatory glances as they prepare to commit violence against the defenseless. At this time, the young man hurries his companions to take refuge in a cave, preparing for a night sortie. One of the captives, in tears, begs to be released, clinging to the illusory hope of salvation. The big guy with the disgusting grin promises to be gentle, only increasing the unfortunate girl's animal horror. The girl's desperate scream breaks the silence as rough hands grab her, plunging her into an abyss of horror. A sudden commanding shout makes the rapist freeze. The bandit's face distorts with anger and bewilderment. A mysterious warrior in armor appears on the cliff, and her glowing eyes instill a chilling fear in the bandits. The bandits are shocked to see the warrior, and the girl coldly asks what they are doing with the captive. The mercenaries, with vile grins, invite the stranger to join their cruel fun. Suddenly, the warrior disappears, leaving the stunned bandits in complete bewilderment. The girl delivers a crushing blow with lightning speed, not giving the enemy even a chance to react. The surviving bandit screams in horror as he looks at his defeated and comically beaten partner. Without giving him time to recover, the warrior unleashes a barrage of furious blows on the second bandit. The scream of horror is cut off as the second mercenary is thrown aside by the deadly attack. Hearing the screams, the remaining bandits realize with alarm that their fun has turned into a bloody massacre. The warrior stands in an ominous red aura, turning into a real demon in the eyes of the bandits. Panicked, the mercenaries start running, desperately calling for help from their boss. The gang leader runs out in alarm at the noise, trying to understand the reason for the panic of his subordinates. The boss furiously orders a halt as he sees his men running in terror from the unknown threat. The surviving mercenaries desperately plead for salvation as the ruthless warrior stands over the fallen. The bandit leader, barely containing his anger, tries to find out from the stranger the reason for the sudden attack. The girl coldly points to the kidnapped captive, directly accusing the bandits of their obvious crime. The boss tries to get out of it by brazenly claiming that they are just slave traders in the service of Duke Eskar. As proof, the man presents a scroll, which he passes off as an official document. The name of Duke Eskar makes Rosalind wary because Mr. Rain has already mentioned him. The memory takes the warrior to the office, where Rain instructed her to monitor all those who arrived from Duke Eskar. Rosalind takes the order seriously, specifying what exactly should be given special attention. Rosalind recalls Rain's funny order to simply look for trouble, which initially left the warrior in a stupor. The gang leader, with a false smile, offers to forget the misunderstanding, hoping to avoid the inevitable reprisal. The girl realizes that Mr. Rain's order was a direct instruction to act against these scoundrels. Rosalind, in a rage, attacks her boss, accusing young Master Rain of causing atrocities on the territory. The warrior, with icy determination, orders all the bandits to kneel, or else they will have only themselves to blame. The leader's patience snaps and he shouts out an insult with hatred, losing all self-control. A man confidently threatens a lonely girl, doubting her chances of surviving against a crowd. In response, Rosalind demonstrates her unbreakable strength and determination by striking the ground with her spear. The warrior repeats her ultimatum, offering the bandits a final choice between surrender and certain death. The leader, maddened with rage, rushes into the attack, confident that the impudent girl is seeking her own death. With one easy movement, the warrior disarms the leader, demonstrating a stunning superiority in strength. A cry of pain echoes across the clearing as the boss's body is sent flying backwards from the crushing blow. The fallen leader lies on the ground with the tip of a spear at his throat, fully aware of his defeat. Rosalind, holding the leader, gives an ultimatum to the rest of the bandits, leaving them no choice. The sudden arrival of reinforcements greets Lady Rosalind, finally crushing the mercenaries' morale. The girl imperiously orders all the criminals to be arrested and thrown into prison until Mr. Rain makes a decision. The warrior hurries to report to the young master's office, understanding the importance of what happened. Rosalind kneels before Rain, reporting the capture of a suspicious caravan from the lands of Duke Eskar. The young man is jokingly happy that the girl found problems for him so quickly and easily. Rain, with a predatory smile, praises Rosalind and eagerly asks about the actions of the captured caravan. Rosalind reports that the captured caravan was carrying slaves with documents from Duke Eskar. The warrior looks at the young master in bewilderment, not understanding the reason for his sudden reaction. Rain is furious that these bastards dared to trade people in the territory of the new ruler. The young man, together with his maid, resolutely heads to the dungeon to see the chained leader. Rain, with icy calm, reproaches the bandit for the unheard-of impudence of trading people in other people's lands. The prisoner, with a cheeky grin, reminds that it was the young man who dared to go against the powerful Duke Eskar. The man, with impudent self-confidence, advises the ruler to join their alliance. Otherwise, the young man will face a miserable end. The bandit's words about the former ruler make Rain and the maid tense up, suspecting a deep conspiracy. The bandit proudly boasts of a long-standing alliance, revealing the horrific scale of the underground slave trade. Rain's eyes flash with an icy fire, and the young man demands that the location of the remaining captives be revealed immediately. The prisoner, laughing madly, taunts Rain, demanding humiliating pleas for information. The young man warns with icy calm that the bandit's life is in his hands and he will regret his stubbornness. The leader boasts confidently of Duke Eskar's protection, believing that it makes him invulnerable. Rain grabs the man's chin sharply, making it clear who is really in charge here. The bandit, still trying to save face, accuses the young man of empty threats and pretense. With a deceptively sweet smile, Rain orders the maid Leia to teach the impudent man an unforgettable lesson. Leia raises the knife without hesitation, and the prisoner's desperate cry of horror echoes throughout the dungeon. As the man writhes in pain, the young gentleman watches calmly, waiting for him to break. Unable to withstand the torture, the bandit panics and shouts out a confession, revealing the location of the abandoned hut. Rain immediately orders Leia to send Rosalind with the cavalry to rescue the kidnapped girls. Rain warns the prisoner with an icy threat that lying will cost him more than his own life. The dying bandit gleefully reports that a squad of elite assassins of Duke Eskar is waiting for them in the hut. The leader, with a mad laugh, predicts their inevitable death at the hands of professional assassins. The scout reports to the young master that the hut is indeed occupied, confirming his worst fears. Rain gives a clear order to set up an ambush, intending not to miss any of the Duke's henchmen. At the door of the hut, Rosalind prepares for the assault as tensions build to a fever pitch. Opening the door, Rain, the warrior, and the maid are frozen in shock by the horrific scene inside. Inside, they find cells containing girls terrified to death, begging for mercy. The sight of numerous cages containing captive women reveals the true scale of the slave trader's cruelty. Shocked by what he saw, the young man immediately orders Rosalind to bring out all the rescued girls. A sudden arrow aimed at Rosalind breaks the tense silence of the hut, signaling a trap. The warrior repels the attack with lightning-fast reactions, demonstrating her incredible combat power. Rosalind panics and screams at Rain about the danger, realizing that they have fallen into a deadly trap. The cavalry squad instantly closes their shields, creating an impenetrable wall to protect the young master. More figures emerge from the shadows, and Rain coldly wonders if they are Grand Duke Ardalian's men. The leader of the group, with deceptive calm, suggests avoiding conflict and resolving everything peacefully. Rosalind scornfully rejects the offer, declaring that they have nothing to talk about with such knights. The young man stops his faithful warrior, deciding to personally deal with the unexpected guests. The leader, with a cynical grin, admits to having collaborated with Duke Eskar for many years in the sale of slaves. A man coldly exposes the monstrous profits of human trafficking, valuing every life in gold. The leader of the assassins tempts Rain with a share of the annual profits, promising a profitable partnership. The man makes an even more vile offer, promising to find and deliver goods for free at will. Rosalind is seething with rage, ready to destroy the bastards for their mere suggestion. Rain plays along with a sly grin, asking about the amount, which leaves Rosalind in complete shock. The leader confidently offers 10,000 gold coins a year, believing that the deal is already in the bag. The young man sneers contemptuously, asking if they take him for some kind of beggar. The young man boasts that his sister gives him much larger amounts of pocket money. The confused leader of the slave traders asks the milord how much money he wishes to receive. Rain, with an imperturbable expression, names the absurd sum of 100,000 gold coins per month. The leader explodes with indignation, shouting that they don't earn that much in a year from selling slaves. Rain interrupts the bargaining with icy indifference, making it clear that he is not interested in pitiful handouts. The young man gives the order to turn the enemies into porcupines, and the archers immediately prepare to fire. The leader of the assassins, in a panic, tries to buy time, begging to be allowed to report everything to the Duke. In his thoughts, the man already anticipates how Duke Eskar's army will destroy the small detachment of the impudent man. In an attempt to deceive Rain, the slave trader offers to leave a deposit as a token of his false sincerity. The young man instantly recognizes the trick and gives Rosalind the order to attack immediately. Realizing that their plan has failed, the assassins scatter in terror, trying to escape. The leader orders the archers to cover the retreat, hoping to delay Rain's squad and escape. Rosalind, on horseback, furiously commands that fire be opened so that no criminal escapes alive. In response to the pursuit, the Knights of the Rhine are rained down with a deadly hail of enemy arrows. A mage from the enemy squad creates a powerful water shield, easily reflecting a hail of arrows. A sudden, blinding flash of light breaks through the water barrier, catching the mage off guard. Rosalind triumphantly declares that all the enemy's men have already been captured and resistance is useless. The warrior with icy calm pronounces the death sentence on her enemies, leaving them no chance. The leader of the assassins is in despair when he realizes that their plan has failed and that now everyone faces certain death. Seeing Rain standing alone, the man understands that this is the only chance for salvation. The leader gives the order to cover him, intending to grab the young master and use him as a human shield. The remaining assassins rush forward without hesitation, ready to sacrifice themselves for the boss. Rosalind fiercely holds back the onslaught of enemies, desperately shouting at the young man to be careful. The girl gives the order to immediately protect Rain, while the knights rush to stop the leader rushing towards him. The leader, in a desperate rage, rushes at Rain, swinging his dagger for a fatal blow. The man's attack is suddenly stopped by an invisible force right in front of the completely calm young man. The pink-haired maid easily repels the assassins, revealing her incredible strength. The defeated leader realizes with horror that this girl is far from a simple servant. The last surviving assassin, in a suicidal act, attacks Rain, hoping to take revenge. The pink-haired girl, with the grace of a predator, stops the attack with a powerful and precise blow. The knights instantly surround the defeated enemy, leaving him no chance of salvation. The maid looks in cold rage at the assassin who dared to raise his hand against the young master. Suddenly, the girl screams in panic, noticing a new threat aimed straight at Rain's back. The treacherous blade pierces the young man's shoulder, and shock and pain are reflected on the young man's face. Despite the treacherous blow, Rain remains icy calm and orders the men to hold the line. The news of the young master's injury spreads panic among the knights, and they rush to the defense. The leader of the assassins understands that the resulting chaos is the only chance to escape and report everything. Rosalind and Leah run to the wounded boy in horror, fearing the worst outcome. Rain stops the chase, ordering him to be taken back to safety immediately. The warrior desperately urges Leah to quickly bandage the young master's wounds. Suddenly, Rosalind realizes with horror that the culprit of the attack has disappeared without a trace in the confusion. The slaver leader runs desperately through the forest, obsessed with surviving and delivering the news to the Duke. The fugitive's path is suddenly blocked by a mysterious figure that appears from the forest shadows. The elegant Sister Reina greets the enemy with a polite smile, cutting off all his hopes of salvation. The assassin leader makes a fatal mistake by not seeing the threat in the elegant lady blocking his path. Priscilla Zagar introduces herself with icy calm as the Duke's eldest daughter and ruler of the lands. The man falls into a stupor, realizing that the heiress of the powerful Ardalian family stands before him. Panic grips the leader at the thought that all of Duke Escar's dark deeds may now be revealed. The girl, with a sly smile, asks who were the people the assassins fought in the valley. Priscilla reveals the shocking truth that they were the soldiers of her younger brother, Rain Zagar. The slave trader leader is horrified to realize that the boy he tried to kill is the Duke's son. Sister Reina notes with satisfaction that the knight's harvest was large, and her brother's growing up was a surprise. Priscilla leaves, proudly noting that Brother Rain has fully lived up to expectations. The girl praises the young man's intelligence and self-control, preparing to mercilessly deal with such trash as this assassin. Priscilla, with a deceptive smile, promises not to interfere, lulling the vigilance of the doomed enemy. The leader asks again with disbelief, desperately clinging to the ghostly chance of salvation. The girl coldly confirms her role as a simple spectator, enjoying the man's helplessness. Suddenly, Leah appears behind the assassin, and Priscilla announces that he has awakened the real beast. The leader's body is pierced by an uncontrollable tremor from an unknown force that has completely bound him. The man turns to the maid in horror, finally realizing the true source of his fear. Leah's eye flashes with an ominous light, passing the death sentence on him for attacking the young master. Seized with animal terror, the assassin babbles incoherent pleas for mercy, realizing his fate. The maid lifts the man into the air with an invisible force, and his pleas for life are frozen in midair. The last breath gets stuck in his throat as the leader realizes that his life is painfully fading away. In the last moments of his life, the leader realizes with horror that the maid's magic exceeds any imagination. Under the ominous cross in the sky, Leah reveals her true and terrifying name, Luthien Ilvandar. The assassin's dying scream is cut off as his body is torn apart, splashing across the night sky. The pink-haired girl disgustedly creates a barrier to avoid getting dirty in the enemy's blood. The maid, with icy calm, delivers her verdict that the fool has brought a quick death upon himself. Leah reports to Lady Priscilla that young Master Rain is injured and that she must return immediately. The older sister gives permission with a cold smile, taking full control of the frightening situation. Like a shadow, the faithful servant rushes from her place to be next to her master as quickly as possible. Priscilla, with a sly grin, asks Gwen if she should remind Rain not to anger his loyal servant. The traitor Gwen emerges from the portal, and her appearance reveals a sinister plot against the young man. Gwen confidently states that Leah's loyalty is so great that she would never harm Rain. Priscilla, with a playful grin, chides Gwen for making her brother look like a real scumbag. The joke about a possible marriage with Rain catches Gwen off guard, causing the girl to feel embarrassed and confused. The elder sister gives a cold order to remind Duke Eskar of his insolence and lack of time. Priscilla promises with icy fury that the consequences of insulting the Zagar family will be unbearable. The traitor meekly accepts the order, ready to fulfill the will of her mistress without unnecessary questions. The girl hurries to return so that the young man does not suspect deception and does not reveal the secret absence of his sister. At the mansion, Leah anxiously and tenderly treats the young master's wound, worrying about his condition. Rain stoically downplays the severity of the injury, calling the treacherous blow a mere scratch. Pain pierces the boy when the maid touches the wound, and the girl begs the young man not to move. Gently touching the maid's face, Rain tries to dispel the anxiety, but his carelessness only increases the worry. Leah resolutely rejects the young man's frivolity, demanding immediate rest and complete peace for him. Priscilla bursts into the room, masterfully feigning panic and concern for her wounded brother. With exaggerated alarm, the sister rushes to the young man, demanding that he immediately show the wound. Under the guise of concern, the girl asks a tricky question, trying to assess the seriousness of the consequences for the future. The guy, with a disarming smile, again assures his sister that the wound is just a minor scratch. Both girls, hiding their true motives, unanimously reproach Rain for his unforgivable carelessness. The maid, with a trembling voice, reveals the horrifying truth that only a millimeter separated him from death. The sister immediately picks up the maid's words, sternly scolding her brother for his unacceptable frivolity. The image of concern is replaced by an icy gaze, and Priscilla demands a full account of what happened from her brother. Rain tells with cold determination how interrogating the bandits revealed the terrible truth about the slaves in the valley. The guy recalls the failed negotiations that inevitably led to a brutal fight for the women's lives. The young man calmly explains that in the darkness he did not notice the treacherous dagger that cost him the wound. Priscilla throws herself onto the table with feigned anger, feigning rage at the bandits' unheard-of audacity. The girl reminds with icy contempt that slavery in the lands of Zagar is punishable by the most cruel death. Leah, comforting the master, reports that the captured slave traders turned out to be people of the hated Duke Eskar. The sister's face is distorted by a malicious grin at the thought of Eskar's cowardice, who dared to act behind her back. The young man suggests that insider Eldrick has been helping the Duke amass a bloody fortune for years. Priscilla mentally curses Eldrick for the trouble he's caused, contemplating her next ruthless move. Rain shows mercy by planning to give the rescued women an education and a new life in the city. Priscilla praises her brother with false pride, recognizing the wisdom in his noble impulse. The young man shyly declines the praise, sincerely wanting only to benefit his family. The girl, feigning concern, promises to leave Rain alone, reminding him of her sisterly love. The boy accepts his sister's words with a grateful smile, unaware of the mortal danger. Priscilla feigns a yawn as she shifts responsibility for Rain's safety onto the shoulders of her devoted maid. Leah, with a trembling voice, swears to protect the young master, promising not to allow a single scratch. The insidious sister leaves the room, where her faithful accomplice Gwen is already waiting for her in the corridor. Priscilla coldly confirms that her brother's injuries are not serious, and her mask of concern instantly falls away. The girl's face is distorted by cold rage, because the failure of the assassination attempt ruins her insidious plans. The older sister turns to Nox for help, preparing a new stab in the back of her gullible brother. The powerful magician awaits his mistress's command in full readiness, ready to fulfill any will. Priscilla gives the icy order to interrogate the bandit leader, but to keep him alive for her own purposes. The girl clarifies that Rain will conduct the interrogation, cunningly framing her brother and hiding her true intentions. Defeated in battle, Armando kneels before Rain, swearing eternal allegiance to his new master. The young man recalls with irony the proud words of Armando, who swore to die rather than serve the nobleman. Rain humorously mimics the pompous speeches of his new subordinate, causing him obvious irritation. A bad joke ends in sharp pain when the wound on the guy's shoulder opens again from sudden movements. Armando looks at the gentleman with complete disappointment, doubting his adequacy and regretting his oath. Armando's sudden surge of loyalty proves to Rain that his strange behavior has worked and that the boy is now in his power. Confused and completely broken, Armando admits defeat and readily asks how he can be of service. Rain, with cold seriousness, tests Armando one last time, demanding a final answer. The boy, with ardent determination, swears eternal loyalty, ready to serve his new master. The young man enthusiastically takes the oath, announcing the beginning of a new era and grandiose plans. As if bestowing a crown, the young man appoints the stunned Armando as the first director of the workshop. The alchemist falls into a stupor, not understanding how his modest talents can be useful in such a position. With a mysterious smile, Rain hands his subordinate a mysterious blueprint, the key to future prosperity. The guy reveals his ambitious plan to industrialize Usling, starting with the construction of a dam. Armando studies the drawings in awe and shock, realizing that Rain's genius surpasses even his teachers. The solemn moment is interrupted by the sudden appearance of a stranger who bursts in with disturbing news. An urgent incident makes everyone freeze, and the atmosphere of hope is replaced by an ominous premonition. The sudden news of the brutal murder of the bandit leader in the dungeon leaves everyone in shock. Rain surveys the crime scene with icy calm, trying to find even the slightest clue. The night girl reports that the lifeless body was discovered by a guard just half an hour ago. The bloody symbol on the wall becomes an ominous riddle, the key to which is hidden in the darkness. The red-haired sorceress silently senses the invisible, her magic reaching out to the source of evil. The magician anxiously confirms his worst fears. Traces of forbidden dark magic remain in the dungeon. The news of the presence of dark magic causes everyone to feel a chilling sense of horror and a premonition of great trouble. The young man notes with bitter irony that his lands, full of talent, have also given shelter to followers of darkness. Leah desperately begs the master to immediately leave the cursed place, fearing for his life. The young man dismisses the maid's concerns with disarming calm, underestimating the true threat. The red-haired sorceress reluctantly agrees with Leah, feeling that the ominous aura of the dungeon is becoming unbearable. Dark magicians appear as ruthless killers who operate from the shadows, leaving no trace. The sorceress ponders aloud the motives for the murder, suspecting that someone was desperately trying to silence the bandit. The mage's gaze is full of concern. She warns Rain of a mortal threat if he has become a target of dark forces. The ruler of Essling addresses the rescued girls. His voice sounds confident and promises them a new life. The young man, with a serious expression, offers the former captives a choice on which their future fate will depend. The first sentence gives hope of returning home, but fear and confusion can still be seen in the girls' eyes. As a second option, the young man offers them shelter, work, and protection, turning them into his subjects. The guide tries to defuse the situation by kindly asking one of the girls if she remembers the way home. A painful silence becomes the answer, and Rain bitterly realizes that the trauma has erased the captive's memory of the past. The nun sympathetically explains that the exhausted children do not believe in the sincerity of help after the horrors they have experienced. The woman sadly warns the young man that winning the trust of broken souls will be incredibly difficult. Rain, with childlike spontaneity, declares her talent for getting along with children and sends Leah out for a treat. A young man with a warm smile offers hungry children the best cookies in Osling, hoping to break the ice. The guy tenderly hands the cookie to the most frightened girl, giving her freedom of choice and without putting pressure. The little girl takes the treat with trepidation, her eyes full of doubt, but curiosity gets the better of her. The delicious taste of the cookies causes a storm of delight in the girl, erasing the shadow of fear from her face. The other children, seeing their friend's sincere joy, pounce on the treat, forgetting their previous mistrust. Rain, with a sly smile, offers to play a game that will help him discover their secrets. One of the girls, with timid curiosity, inquires about the rules, taking the first step towards her savior. Rain, with a sly smile, explains the rules of the game, where you can buy truth or courage for cookies. After a few hours, the ice of mistrust melts and the game turns into a timid dialogue. Finally, one of the girls, Mia, has trouble remembering her home, a village called Glen. The young man gratefully praises Mia for her bravery, his gentle touch giving her hope. The young man promises the girl a safe return, his gaze full of determination and care. The guy gives the order to immediately prepare an escort, turning words into real actions. The ruler realizes that he needs a reliable person to look after the remaining children. Driven by curiosity, Rain decides to use his ability to see hidden talents. The scan shows only normal characteristics, and the hero's face darkens with disappointment. Suddenly, the young man's gaze freezes on the profile of a girl, whose incredible features shock him. The red-haired girl sits alone, her body covered in bruises, but her eyes reveal an unbroken will. Rain is amazed to see that Aaliyah Farran's stats are comparable to those of Leia, his strongest knight. Priscilla interrogates Nox in a mysterious setting, trying to unravel the mystery of the bandit leader's death. The magician coldly denies the murder, admitting only that he tortured the prisoner with dark magic. The woman asks with icy calm whether the torture succeeded in extracting any information. Nox is disappointed to report that the bandit turned out to be just a pawn, who knew nothing about the customer's plans. Priscilla is lost in thought, not understanding why anyone would want to silence such an insignificant figure. The sorcerer makes a sinister guess that death was not the goal, but merely a means to something greater. Nox's gaze turns icy when he hints at black magic rituals that require human sacrifice. The woman's face is distorted with alarm, and she gives a stern order to protect young Master Rain at any cost. Nox bows meekly before Priscilla as she takes satisfaction in the fact that her cunning plan has finally worked. In the bedroom of Duke Eskar, a mysterious ritual unfolds in which a woman heals another with the help of shining light. The seductress in the lace mask tenderly kisses the Duke, her touch full of lies and hidden motives. The idyll in the chambers is broken by the sudden appearance of a guard, interrupting the intimate moment at the most inopportune hour. A warrior with a serious face reports the arrival of an important guest, whose appearance foreshadows a serious conversation. The Duke embraces his companion with undisguised irritation, his anger directed at the uninvited visitor. The guard reports that Lord Eldrick of Aisling has arrived to discuss urgent matter, and tensions are rising. A cynical grin distorts Duke Eskar's face at the thought of what new gift Eldrick has prepared for him. The man coldly pushes his mistress away, ordering her to take the guest to the office and preparing for a business meeting. The Duke's thoughts are filled with anticipation of a new victim, and he eagerly awaits another beauty from his supplier. Duke Eskar greets Eldrick with false joy, hiding a predatory impatience behind his smile. The guest's late visit makes the man suspicious, and his gaze becomes cold and appraising. The Duke anticipates that Eldrick has brought him new goods, not hiding his debauchery. The visitor apologizes for the intrusion with icy calm, his face not auguring anything good. Eldrick intrigues his interlocutor, declaring that this time he brought not a woman, but important news. The man reports that Rain Zager has banished him, cutting off the Duke's access to the supply of live goods. Eskar explodes with rage, not believing that his loyal accomplice was thrown out so easily after many years of service. The guest bitterly admits that he underestimated the young and self-confident ruler of Essling, Rain Zagar. Eldrick tells how the young man personally dealt with the leader of the bandits, a key figure in their dirty business. The Duke is shocked to realize that their covert operation could have been completely exposed by the cheeky guy. Eldrick, with feigned bravery, declares that he is risking his life to deliver this news, hinting at a mortal threat. The Duke anxiously asks if this means that the impudent youth Rain will dare to attack him personally. The guest reminds Eskar of the illegality of the slave trade, suggesting that Rain is using it as a pretext for revenge. Cold sweat breaks out on the Duke's forehead at the thought that exposure to the Emperor would mean certain death. The man desperately seeks salvation, asking his accomplice if he has any plan. Eldrick's face twists into a sinister grin as he reveals the dam has been built, seeing it as the key to revenge. Eskar is perplexed as he tries to understand what role an ordinary hydraulic structure could play in their conspiracy. The visitor, with a devilish gleam in his eyes, explains that the collected water is capable of flooding the entire lower city. The villain proposes to use the dam to create a disaster in order to capture Essling under the pretext of helping. The Duke is horrified to realize that this insidious plan involves the murder of the son of the Grand Duke Aldarian. Duke Eskar refuses in panic, paralyzed by an animal fear of the wrath of the Grand Duke Aldarian. Eldrick coldly reminds them that if they are denounced to the Emperor, they will both face certain death. The conspirator offers a brilliantly simple solution: to blame Rein's death on an accident with the dam. The man tempts the Duke by painting pictures of the future, where after the capture of Essling, any beauties will be available to him. Greed and fear win out, and Eskar, with a predatory grin, agrees to carry out the insidious plan. Red-haired Ioria sits in an elegant pose, her calm and beauty creating a sharp contrast with the world around her. Rain is losing patience, because for 3 days the mysterious girl has not uttered a single word, plunging into silence. The young man awkwardly tries to start a conversation, but Aoria only silently tastes the offered cookie. The young man's face darkens as he imagines the horrors the child must have endured to become so withdrawn. The sudden appearance of the maid interrupts Rain's heavy thoughts, bringing him back to reality. The maid excitedly reports the completion of the dam, foreshadowing long-awaited changes. A smile of relief lights up Rain's face, as this success is the first glimmer of hope in a long time. The young man looks at his comrades with enthusiasm, anticipating the beginning of a new era for the city. The young man orders Leah to gather the nobility and elves so that everyone can witness this historic moment. The boy softly addresses the silent Ioria, inviting the girl to a grand celebration in honor of the victory. Rain tries to melt the ice in the child's heart by promising not only treats, but also the company of his peers. Having received no answer, the young man leaves the maids with the girl, giving her freedom of choice. At the foot of the dam, the elf and Priscilla anxiously ask if the structure will withstand the onslaught of the elements. The elven queen's face expresses concern, because even magic is powerless against the fury of the mountain streams. Rain reassures his companions with unwavering confidence, his calm contrasting with their fears. Rain exudes absolute confidence, claiming that he personally checked every detail of the dam's flawless design. Selena gracefully floats in the air, reporting to the young master that all orders have been fully completed. The girl describes in detail the powerful stone slabs and iron mechanisms that guarantee the reliability of the structure. The young man looks at Selena with approval, his gesture expressing the highest praise for the work done. The guy solemnly invites the elf and Priscilla to share with him the historic moment of the first release of the water. Rhine enthusiastically proclaims that this engineering marvel will bring new life and hope to the city. The elven queen looks with alarm at the rising waters, fearing for the fate of the lands in the event of a catastrophe. Priscilla also expresses doubt about the safety of the giant structure, her gaze full of worry. The woman in the hat is adamant that they cannot risk the lives of ordinary people for this project. The young man, with unshakable confidence, stops the panic, guaranteeing the complete safety of the verified design. The powerful flow of water symbolizes not just the irrigation of the land, but the complete transformation of the future of the entire city. Rhine declares with unwavering faith that this dam will be a miracle that they will all create together. The elven queen and Priscilla prepare to witness the great moment with bated breath, casting aside all doubts. In solemn silence, Rain and her faithful companions turn the lever, launching a new era. The sudden appearance of Eldrick hovering in the sky ruins the triumph, his figure casting an ominous shadow. The villain's face is distorted by a smug grin. He enjoys the effect produced by his daring return. Rain and his companions are stunned. The young man can hardly believe his eyes, recognizing in the uninvited guest an old enemy. Priscilla explains with disdain that the man is a former rebel lord, exiled by Rain's brother. Eldrick turns to the young man with sarcastic surprise, not expecting to see him alive and well. A confident grin never leaves Rain's face as he challenges his enemy, coldly inquiring about the purpose of his visit. Eldrick proudly announces his new status as a noble of an enemy empire, defying the past. Rain, with a sly grin, suggests that the traitor's pitiful situation forced him to crawl back. The villain's face is distorted by a grimace of hatred as he shouts that he has returned for merciless revenge. The young man mockingly asks if the lone avenger has lost his mind. Eldrick bursts into evil laughter, reproaching the young man for his stupidity and believing in his loneliness. The villain triumphantly reveals his trump card, a squad of powerful magicians ready to unleash destructive magic. The man describes with glee how water magic will destroy the dam and swallow the entire city whole. The elven queen's face is distorted with horror. She cannot believe the reality of this monstrous threat. Priscilla, with icy fury in her voice, warns Eldrick of the consequences if he dares to take this step. The girl swears on the name of her family that she will find and punish the traitor no matter where he runs. Eldrick revels in their impotent rage, his mad laughter echoing across the dam. The villain concentrates a clot of pure magic in his hand, preparing to deliver a crushing blow. The man fires a magical projectile into the sky, ordering his mages to begin their attack. Rain, Priscilla, and the elf stand frozen in shock, their gaze fixed on the water. In the distance, a giant wave rises, the result of witchcraft, ready to crash onto the dam. The elven queen, in a panic, begs Rain to flee, as the place has become deadly dangerous. The young man remains unperturbed, his calm in the face of the elements bordering on madness. The girl, with despair in her voice, asks the young man if he is sure that the structure is strong. The guy with a predatory grin declares that every screw of this stone fortress is calculated with perfect precision. A giant wave, empowered by magic, looms over the dam, ready to swallow everything in its path.